And make sure the microphone was working first. It's going to be habit at this point. So, message said before, if you read the title, I'm going to be working on a commission that I've been putting off because I don't know how to tackle it. Again, I don't blame Madeline too much, but this was a commission she essentially agreed I could do before asking if I actually knew how to make it. So I'm like, oh, excuse me. So, yeah. It may be somewhat impressive in terms of what I can do crocheting wise, and I may have picked it up really fast, but that does not mean I'm at the stage of being able to just look at a shape and be like, oh, I can do that. I'm not at that stage of my development yet, so. Someone asked for a number 1 character, and I'm like, I can make commissions of things I already made. That's easy enough. All I have to do in that case is just alter a pattern I've already used. But I'm like, if it's something I've never made before, I don't think I'm quite at that level in my crocheting journey yet, to where I can just look and be like, yeah, I can make that using basic shapes and stuff like that. So, I have everyone. I gotta respond to some on Discord, sorry. And like I've put it on my Discord, but for those who follow that, but this is going to be a brief thing. Like I'm literally going to set like a 2-hour timer so I don't eat ridiculously late. But I also had a little bit of a late breakfast and I had a snack earlier. So but I don't want this to be a long stream. I don't want to wear myself out because I do still want to do the Black Nuzlocke in the evening Tuesdays like we typically do. So I'm just doing this to get this commission started because I've been procrastinating it for so long. This is an ADHD thing. When faced with a problem that's going to take mental effort to get started, that you don't know how to tackle said problem, or you perceive it as being a long task, your brain will always push it off to the side and be like, no, go do the thing you already know how to do and do it again. You know? Because that won't be as hard, because that's not a new task. We don't have to reprocess your brain and create a new pathway in order to make that task happen. Making something entirely new is that. So I'm trying to make this thing, someone wanted me to do essentially this character that's supposed to be like a number 1. And believe it or not, it's not the easiest thing in the world to find a number 1 pattern. Not in terms of like the pattern itself, but in like the number 1 that has the line across the bottom. Like, you know, the numeral. You can find a lot of like straight number 1s, but I couldn't find any that had the bottom on, and that's what this person wants. And so I told Madeline going forward, I'm like, okay, if we ever accept commissions, make sure I am actually there and can say, yes, I can do that. And again, it's not like I don't think there's really a lot of things I can't do given enough time, but like, this person has been asking Madeline a lot, you know, where's the thing? I'm like, she probably gave them an unrealistic expectation, like a few weeks. A brand new thing I've never made before. It's going to take some time to figure out how to do it, because I want to give a good product. I don't ever like to turn in half-made work. So I've been, like, looking around and being like, this is a weird-looking thing. I don't even know what it is. I'm not sure quite how to do it. I guess we're going to figure it out along the way. Okay, where's my 5 hook? Assuming I'm going to have to use a 5 for this. My 6 is downstairs. I'm going to go with 5. I think 5 will be fine. If not, I might have to go grab my 6 hook, which I think is downstairs. But anyway, let me take a look at this. 8 will definitely be too big. 4 is going to be too small. I might have to run off a stream right now. I just started. I might have to run off to go get my 6 hook. I thought it was in my little baggie. Thing downstairs. I haven't had a chance to show anyone yet, but like I'm working on another large Bonnie, a very big one. Using this very cool purple I found. It might be a gift from Madeline. I don't know yet. It depends on if she likes it when it's done. Sometimes I'll just go and finish something. My siblings like, please let me have it. I'm like, all right, that's your birthday gift for this year. So remember that. Especially because it's always the big things that take me forever to make. But I gotta make this number one, and so I have a pattern on how to make a number one. I don't know how to turn. I'm gonna turn that into a character with googly eyes and little feet, but we're gonna figure this out. But I also, in hindsight, they're like just if I told her I'm like, okay, we do a commission like this going forward. Is it something I've not made before? Give a very large creation time because it's going to take me some time to figure it out, especially because most of the time I'm doing other jobs. The only reason I'm here right now is because I happen not to be nannying today because my kid is sick, so I didn't have to come in. Otherwise, and I'm gonna have to go in tomorrow because I got a sub. They got some teachers out, and they always need subs, so I'm there as I need to be. But I just I just like trying to figure out how to make something new, especially something that I'm like, if it's a new thing, you're like, I can't wait to see how this thing ends. Like the big dragon I've been working on downstairs, it's almost done. It just needs its decorative frills essentially on its body, but there's a lot of those, and my mom's just been busy, and she's my seamstress. But like that I've been working on for a while because I have a clear vision of what I wanted it to be. I was always excited by what it will look like when it's done, so I push myself forward. When I'm working on something that I don't know how the heck it's going to look at the end, and it's not for something I know of, it's a lot harder to find that motivation to work on it. So that's why I'm essentially trapping myself behind the camera here. I'm going to briefly switch screens um, to my waiting screen so I can go get my 6 hook because I did not realize that was not in my bag. But and I'll be back in a few minutes. Anyone who shows up by then, I'll be here to chat. This is probably going to be mostly a quiet crochet chat, so I'm going to just kind of listen to music and try and focus in and get my thing in there. But if anyone wants to chat with me, obviously I can do that. If anyone comes by and has questions, concerns, funny thing that happened, I just came off the back of finishing another section in my Genshin Impact playthrough and then speaking about it for 45 minutes because I'm really trying to come to terms with that game. I really am. If I didn't like it, or I didn't want to like it, I would have given up on it by now. The thing is that I'm like, I see goodness in it, and my brain just keeps focusing on it, because, like, we have to figure this problem out. We should love this, why don't we? And, it's hard to, I'm also stubborn. It's hard to give up on a thing like that, so that's why I keep going back, and I keep talking about it, and I keep doing it on stream, and I keep forward with this recording, because it's me trying to parse out my feelings and figure out how I feel about this game, and honestly being a bit nitpicky. But I will also try and be the same way when I play Star Rail for the next time. I've not gotten my limited edition yet. I kind of hoped it was going to be here earlier in the week, like last week. It's not here yet, which is fine. It was supposed to come out late January, but now it looks like it might be an early February thing instead. So we'll just, that happens. And besides, I'm not going to start my Star Rail thing because I want to start them both the same way. I started my Genshin one, my new playthrough, watching all the trailers. I want to do the same thing for Star Rail and watch all the trailers. There are less trailers, so hopefully it won't take as long. Although I do believe a lot of their trailers are a little longer. But I want to do the same thing again. Just because I enjoyed doing that. Sorry, I haven't edited the video yet, but I mean, the live streams, if you want to watch the live stream, that is up on my YouTube channel, Cozy Gamers, under the live tab. But, like, I want to edit some things. I just not sat down to do it, because again, ADHD, new task. You want the new simulation of the task, but, autism wants the perfection and, like, research the thing to death, so you know every possible variable going in, which means that sometimes you just sit there being like, I should be working on something, but I'm scared to start working on something. Hence this number I'm going to be working on in a minute here. But anyway, I'm going to not be around the bush anymore. I'm going to go grab my hook so I can start on this, because the whole idea is I'm going to pin myself in this chair, in this location, and by putting myself on camera, force myself to work on this commission I really need to work on. And, yeah. It's like body doubling, but with the internet. Maybe some people can do that with me too. Maybe I'll chat a little bit, but I'm probably going to be fairly quiet this time around. But let me go get my hook, and we can go from there. Alright, now I'm back. Got my hook. Also, you like all my Stitch things? I got my Stitch pants and my Stitch sweatshirt on today. My Stitch gaming icon back here. He's my little inspirational thing on my microphone because I thought him holding the controller was fitting. Anyway, let's see what we can do here. Alright, let's get this number 1 moving. So I probably won't be chatting a lot unless someone like says something in the chat to like compel me to say something. Because otherwise I'm going to try and focus on this because this is a new pattern. I don't know how it's going to go. But we'll see. Chain 20. Alright. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Alright. Going 1 from the hook. 19. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. You know, I'm using Bernette blanket right now. This is from one of those little to-go packs. Like this, they're essentially circular wheels that the idea are you take them on a plane or a road trip or whatever, and you can make like a full blanket out of them. Like it has 3 colors already divided up, and it's all one thing, so you can just roll it all together. And I would like to do one of those at some point. I think it'd be fun to do, but again, blankets are very repetitive, so I've only made one so far, and even then that took me a while to do. Because it's a good mindless thing, but like, I can also very mindlessly make plushies in a way and have the product much faster. So, I love everyone. Like, I go mention, I'm doing a Nuzlocke tonight, and everyone's like, yay, we get to watch you suffer. And, like, I'm glad that you guys have your priorities in order. But, there's, let me see. There is just an interesting texture to this. And it also kind of on this Bernette as well, but, like, it has a sort of, like, roughness to it, not necessarily like in a rough, coarse way, but more rough, like a well-loved stuffed animal would come, like, kind of, have that kind of just well-worn fabric feel to it, and that's how the Bernette stuff in the blanket works. Like the stuff that I have, like I have some other ones, like the baby ones are softer, much softer, and like some of the other colors can be a lot stiffer. Like I have this one here, it's a bit stiffer. This is for Godzilla at some point. My mom got for me. She said it would be cute, so I'm like, okay, you got me the yarn. I will therefore try and make something with it. But it has an interesting stiffness to it. Isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's still very soft, but it's just something to note when I'm playing with this. Alright, let's see here. I'm trying to. It's funny. I'm watching myself. I'm trying to send my thing to my grandma because she likes watching me. But I'm like. Anyway, but I don't have a cough right now, but there's definitely something nasty going around the preschool right now. Always is. I've actually was dealing with sore throat and stuff last week, so I'm not necessarily bad. I'm just kind of like chain one, okay, single crease in each stitch to the end. 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 4 rows. See, when I have a pattern, sometimes I'll be do it from the 2nd to the 5th row, and I'm like, I prefer the patterns that go and be like, here, make 5 rows. I'm like, okay, because second to 5th, you're being like, oh, does that mean 5? I'm like, no, actually it means 4 because you're counting the 2nd row as well. So, I'm just gonna. I appreciate it. You can tell sometimes who make these patterns. Like some of them are like more of the older crafting crew, like the people who make scarves and hats and the UK ones, so like where they have like gauge swatches and stuff like that. And then there's the other crowd of more where I'm at, the younger crowd that like are doing plushies, and they have like more informative things. So like you do this for 3 rows. Make sure you do this. Make sure like it's more informative on appearances rather than just follow the thing and do it so many times. And here's some terminology, and you should be able to figure this out. It's not hard. And I like the ones that give you a little bit more direction, being like, just so you know, this should be what you are looking at. So we're going to see this pattern works. I hope it does. Anyway, so I got to do 4 rows of this. So this is round 1. Sometimes even counting rows can be a problem though. This is probably going to be one of those quiet unless you chat me streams. So just hang out for the gothic vibes of the music and, if you want to watch my hands go crazy over here. Yeah, you can see them. I'm trying to make sure you can see them with the microphone. And a little better. So anyone who just wants a little ASMR body doubling, I'm here for you, bro. Sorry if I'm not terribly loud either. I will probably not be high in volume unless someone talks to me and gives me something to like explicitly watch or listen to. I'm watching my grandma's texts and being like, autocorrect is so funny because she's got an old phone. So it means it like breaks up the messages in certain locations and stuff like that, and it's funny. I'm going to be getting a new phone soon. My dad's been meaning to. He doesn't like. My dad's always looking for a reason to upgrade phones. It's for like, for contracts. He likes, as soon as it's paid off, he wants to be like, okay, this thing sucks. Let's get a new one. Like, despite having be pretty well off for money, like we're a very frugal family. We don't really replace something until it's explicitly needs to be. That's why we end up with so many like holes in pants and shoes and stuff like that. So there's 2. But my dad's looking to replace my phone, which has a crack in its screen. Ironically, not the screen protector. The screen protector is actually fine. It's not been cracked at all, but the phone screen itself has a crack in it, and I'm just like, sure, why not? So he's looking to replace my phone first. And I'm like, it's still working, functioning fine. Just the screen's cracked. So he's like, I know I'm first on the docket for a phone upgrade. Because he like goes and looks for those deals that like Cyber Monday and stuff like that. Because yeah, I agree. I don't often buy things just brand new for the sake of getting it because I can. I'm usually buying things being like, okay, this is like a new thing that I really, really like. Or I'll be like, this thing is on sale, so therefore I'm going to try and get it. Or, lately me and my sister be like, it was a hard week. We need to get a donut sort of vibes. We tried to go out to find like ramen, a noodle place yesterday, because yesterday was a sucky day for us in general. But all the noodle places for some reason are closed on Mondays. And I'm like, all right, cool. It's not sure why, but every place that served noodles was like closed in our immediate area, and we're like, all right, well, I guess we're gonna do that another day. Let's go get pastries then, I guess. This is 2. This thing's curling a lot, but I'm assuming once it's stitched together, it'll lay more flat. Go through the... Best stitch on the row is always the one that can be a little testy. Because sometimes it just curls in on itself. I gotta tease my grandma a little bit because I taught her how to use YouTube, so she knows the basics of how to use YouTube. But I'm also kind of like slowly doing. It's like I was trying to show my mom something on YouTube the other day and be like, okay, click this button first, then we'll go. She's like, I'm ready to do all the things. I'm like, well, one step at a time, Mom. You don't want to end up something weird going on. I'm seeing if my thing comes up through my YouTube or not. Sometimes it doesn't. I can never tell. It's supposed to hypothetically be comment like, okay, there it is. I just want to see my chats working from the YouTube side, so I have it up on my phone, which is fine. We'll leave that there. Anyway, back to my pattern. Get out of there. Let's see, I was on 2, so I should be on 3 now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When you have family that lives like several states over, sometimes it's gonna be difficult to get in contact, especially because phone calls are fine, but just they're my least favorite way of communicating with people. I'd rather like do a video message than like do a phone call, just because they're usually like hard to read. They usually have breaking up. You can't tell the other person's perspective just based on their voice. And I rely on so much on that sort of stuff to figure people out in the first place, so I don't care for phone calls. Can I say hello when it says chat? Surprised bird bath. Yes. It's funny. Whoever is the surprised bird bath, like, it's funny you're meant to see, like, can I say hello where it says chat? I'm like, well, considering you just used the chat actually to ask that question, you've already answered that. But, yes, you can. You can say hello that way. Like your username. Where'd it come from? Mine's Dusklugia. At least that's on my other YouTube channel. Cozy Gamers is where all our stream stuff goes. See, that was 3, so I should be on 4 now. 1, 2, 3, 4. Need one more. So, My username comes from the Shadow Lugia as the holy grail of Pokemon games. I wasn't allowed to have Pokemon growing up for reasons. Um, Long story for another time. But story I just don't feel like talking about right now. Not because it's bad, but just because it's long. It's a long story, and I want to get through this sentence. But Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness was like the holy grail of Pokemon games I wanted to own. I was committed to be like, if I only own one Pokemon game in my life because I am not allowed to have it in this house, then I want Pokemon XD because you started with an Eevee, which is my name, so it's one of my favorite Pokemon, and Eevee was very cute. And it was, but it also had Shadow Lugia, which is to this day I think the only like shadow form Pokemon where like they have shadow Pokemon in Pokemon Let's Go, but like a shadow Pokemon as in like it changes appearances, it's purple and dark and edgy and stuff like that. And I just liked Shadow Lugia. I thought it was really cool. Lugia was already one of my favorite legendaries at the time, so I made my username way back when on YouTube, like back in the ye olden days, back before like YouTube looked like it was currently. You know, when YouTube used to be for like largely for music videos, actually. People doing stupid things on the internet. It still is that, but YouTube's just so much more than that is now. A lot of people like chase it as a career field, and that was definitely not the case when I first made an account way back when. But okay, I think this is going to be like the body of the number one. Again, I'm going to figure this out as we go here. Right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, should be right. So, my name was Dusk Lugia because Shadow Lugia was already taken. So I was like, okay, what's another word for... I loved the Thesaurus as a kid. It probably was another hint that I was a weird kid. And that, again, had some neurodivergencies going on because I loved using thesaurus.com. And I loved using dictionary.com. I loved finding vocab, finding new ways to use words, and then figuring out, like, other words for words. Like, I took pride in middle school of knowing, like, 10 different ways to say black or red because I used the thesaurus. And so, like, Dusk Lugia is supposed to be the idea of, like, oh, yeah, I was trying to find a word that someone else hadn't used. And Dark Lugia, I think, was even already used. So I was like, Dusk Lugia. That's Shadow Lugia, my favorite Pokemon of all time. And then just kind of stuck. Because it's not claimed on most places. So, like, I actually, in most places, can't go and just use Dusk Lugia everywhere. So that kind of became my signature username after that. Like, everywhere I'm on it. Most things I'm on, if you find Dusk Lugia, it's probably me. I also tend to use the same icon. It's a little cute Dusk Lugia that I made in some online photo editor before Photoshop was really a thing, too. A lot of my things are old. Makes me feel old. I'm not even 30 yet. I'm going to be 30 this year, but, you know. I'm not even 30 yet, and I feel so old sometimes. I was talking to my sister about that the other day and being like, man, how can you not get depressed when you are, like, you know, she's still in her mid-20s, I'm going to be 30, and you're still, by all definitions, young, but you feel so old. You feel like you've not done anything in your life. You feel like you're ready to roll into the home now, you know? That's, it's just a weird feeling to have. Okay, let's see. Slip stitch over first. Alright. Slip stitch over first. 7 crochets. Again, sometimes they just write these patterns kind of weirdly. Okay, so slip stitch, I'm assuming that means slip stitch the first 7. This person also might be using UK terms, and that sometimes is a little difficult to understand. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Although speaking of UK terminology, there is like I realized lately when I was like writing stuff, is there a way I can reply to people? But anyway, I realized I actually spell a lot of words with the British spelling of them. Like it's where you add like an extra E or an extra U, like color, instead of COLOR, you spell it COLOUR. Or like dialogue is one I get all the time. I spell that Dialogue, I believe, or it's Ouge. It's hard to do it in my head. But like dialogue, like the English way does not have a U in it. So there's like so many words I'll like use while I'm typing out, and they'll mark it as wrong and autocorrect. But I'll go and check on it. It's like, this is typically used in British language. I'm like, well, that's because I read a lot of literature, and a lot of the good stuff does come from Britain, especially when you're talking Gothic stuff. So I just know a lot more British spellings. Of course, my mom also says because she has her British heritage. She always loved to tease her about. Just we did one of those like, find your ancestry kits, and my mom was like 50% British or Isles or something like that. Okay, single chain one. Okay, chain one, and then single crane in the same place as a slip stitch. Okay, one. Next 6. 1, 2. Oh, this must be the bottom of the 1, I'm guessing. 3, 4, 5, 6. Let me guess. Now I go turn. Alright. Chain 1. Single chain each. Okay, so I'm guessing they're using slip stitch here to make these kind of edges. So you see the kind of thing here. You see there's like this little bump here. It's because slip stitches, the only reason you have a bigger or smaller stitch, from what I understand at least of crocheting, is they stand at different heights. So like a double crochet, a half double crochet, or a triple crochet, they stand higher. This is a normal stitch, and this is a slip stitch. You can see there's like half the height. So I'm guessing that's where our actual 1 is going to be here. Where did my little counter thing go? I know I brought it up here with me. It's funny, you go and look around and be like, I got all my stuff in place, then you actually look around and be like, where did all my stuff go? Those are the drawing tablets. I might just have to use a counter on my phone, which is fine. Because I'm assuming this is the part where I'm making the 1. This is probably the bottom of the 1 I'm working on right now. It's funny to watch something as you're making it and you've never made it before and be like, I think I'm starting to see this thing take shape, or else I'm doing this wrong. But, you know, sometimes it can take a while to realize you're even doing something wrong. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It says 7 stitches, so I'm going to assume it's... Alright, let me get a counter up. So I'm going to have to do that 7 through 24, so that's 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 10, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. That's 18 rows. Again, they put on the patterns, they'll be like, from the 7th to the 24th row, and I'm like, how many rows is that? I prefer it much better when they say, do this for 18 rows, and then you'll be like, okay, that makes sense. I'll do this 18 times. The other ones, you'll have to be like, okay, let me do math here for a moment. And I do hate doing math. Not just kidding because I'm bad at it, it's just, I'm an art brain. I do appreciate the routineness of it and the, it will always end up this way of it, but I'm not naturally a math brain. Because I am a divergent, out-of-the-box thinker. Which means I come with 300 ideas a day and accomplish maybe one of them every 3 days. Because I'm good at coming up with the ideas and always good on the following through of ideas. I don't even know how much of this color I'm going to need. That's why I grabbed 2 loops of it, but there's surprisingly more in this little ball thing in here than it looks. I made like almost an entire rat out of that once. Made for my brother. Because even if he snubs his nose at me, I still do care because he is family. But he does frustrate me sometimes. Like, you know, I don't drive it's an anxiety thing. And I know people kind of look down on me sometimes for that. And that is just what it is, you know? Sometimes you care about what people think about you, and then sometimes you just get to a point of tiredness where you're just like, okay, whatever. Yeah, I know, it's sad that I, as an adult, don't drive, and, you know, you're like, well, you don't have freedom, and you don't have mobility, and, like, I'm like, well, but what if I don't want those things? What if I don't care about going around by myself anywhere anyway? What if, you know, like, they just assume that, like, oh, you can't drive. There must be some, like, kind of like, oh, you haven't dated before? Oh, you haven't had a drink before? And you're just like, I don't have any interest to, so why would you do something that you're not interested in, you know? I do things I'm not interested in all the time, granted. I have done them a lot in the past for, like, work and stuff like that, but, like, it's like, why bother doing it if you don't care about it in the first place? So, like, I never was in a, like, rush to learn how to drive. It's definitely one of a large, like, it's like public speaking for me. Like, I can do it, but I'll be very stressed about it while I do it, and I'll just kind of black out on the whole experience because my, like, anxiety will reach, like, a dissociation level. So, like, I can do it. I don't lack the ability to do it. I lack the desire to do it, and for some reason that people find that strange. Like, you don't like driving around? I'm like, no. Anywhere I need to go, I can hitch a ride with someone else, or maybe I'll catch a bus. I do not find, and also cars are expensive. You're talking the car itself, paying that off, maintenance, gas, insurance. It's just a big money pit. Honestly, children are the same way. Nothing against them. I work with children all the time, but, like, that's the reason I'm not in any rush to have any. Well, one, I also don't have any, you know, partner to make said children with, but also I'm like, I'm not terribly interested in that because I'm like, you know, I don't see any reason for it, you know? Right now I'm just working on, I'll be doing this in the next week or two. I'll be taking another class as I slowly work towards getting my master's. Why am I getting that? I don't have, like, a, most people be like, I'm getting my master's so I can get this particular job. And I'm like, I'm not, I always enjoy learning. I always feel like that I am lacking a deficit in knowledge. So I'm like, learning new things, growing my own skills is a constant, like, thing for me. I always loved doing that. Like, you know, classes can be frustrating sometimes, depending on the subject matter, the people you're working with, but I always like coming out of it and being like, wow, I made a thing that I couldn't make before. Like, sometimes I wish I just had a structure around me all the time. Be like, that's why I think I'm a fairly good editor, or like a assistant, because I'm like, I love when people just go and tell me what to do, and I'm like, cool. Now I know my parameters, and I'll do that to the best of my ability. Makes things a little easier. But not all of life is like that, unfortunately. There are some things that they're like, you gotta do it yourself. And so, like, I'm working on getting my master's just in creative writing, just because I want to, one, know how to be a better writer. I enjoy writing a lot. A lot of people say I'm very talented at it. You want to read anything I've written? I have some stories in DeviantArt. You can look over there. Again, Dusk Lugia is pretty much what I'm always underneath. That has all my writings and my arts. I think I had a portfolio website at some point. I don't know. It's still up there, probably. It's just old at this point. Though I wouldn't say there's anything on there that I'm not proud of. I'm proud of quite a few things I've written before, but I had a blog for a little bit until, like, again, last October was a hard time for us. So, a lot of things just kind of fell to the wayside, unfortunately. One of those things was my blog. Because, again, my sister and I, we're trying to make this business. That's why I'm doing a commission right now, even though I don't really want to do it. Because we're trying to make a business out of our crafts, because, man, is it rough for millennials sometimes, especially if you're someone like Madeline that graduated at COVID, where the point where you wanted to try and, like, start living your own life, start contributing to society or whatever, and then the world just shuts down. So you're like, oh yeah, you graduated, but literally nothing changed because you can't go anywhere. It's difficult. So we're trying to figure out how to do stuff, and we're like, we both like our own crafts. Ever since I learned how to crochet, I've been able to make things that people like, and I like making people smile, and I like caring for other people, so Fortunately, most of the care fields of today are not the best paying jobs. So you want to be a teacher? Cool. Just be aware you're also going to have to take up some other jobs so you can actually support yourself, because they pay teachers squat in North Carolina unless you're holding particular specialized roles. Which is, again, the other idea with a grad school degree, is that I'm like, I think I could enjoy teaching maybe at the college level. I like to talk, I like to teach, I like to uh, discuss things, I like to proofread. Like, I think I have a lot of teachery traits, but just, I don't think I could ever do something in the middle school or elementary school, because I think the kids would just drive me nuts. And also just because, again, there's not really any feasible, like, pay in it. Like, they wonder why most people don't want to be teachers nowadays. It's because there's no respect in it, and there's no money in it. Like, hey, at least there's no respect in it, but you're getting a decent enough paycheck and benefits and whatnot, then it's not too bad. But, like, when you're, there's so much, taxing on a teacher. I work preschool right now, and even then that can be tiring, and that's to the point where the kids are relatively tame, all things considered. They're nothing like high schoolers or middle schoolers. Middle schoolers are the worst. And I know, because like I had the worst time in middle school. And then going into them, seeing them when I worked with them when I was doing marching band, like, they are the worst. And so it was so I'm like, I would think I would like to have like higher level discussions. So that's why I'm like, let me get my master's, because then you really only need a master's if you want to try and teach at the collegiate level. Yeah, slush, you're supposed to hypothetically get a better pay if you have a graduate program, because you went through the extra, you did more than the bare minimum for the college degree. And I also, again, I do things just to learn. But like, I'm trying to figure out if I can apply for a writing tutor at Liberty, which is where I'm going right now for my graduate degree. I'm doing it online. Because, unfortunately, this degree they don't offer at the actual school, because I'm like, my friend of my mom's, actually, works at Liberty, and she's like, you go down there and rent from her and go and do it. I'm like, I would love to do that, because I feel like I'm much more productive schooling-wise in a school setting. Again, I got many mental isms going on, so being in a learning environment surrounded by other people can sometimes help me, like, body double. At home, it's a little hard to define what's work, what's play, what's education, it's a harder to turn your brain off sort of thing. So I would have liked to go to school, but unfortunately the Creative Writing Masters is not one that they offer at the actual college. It's only online, and which is not a problem. Online is convenient in its own way, but just it's a lot hard to make connections with people online, because so much is not being shown. Which is funny, because I've had many nerd conversations online, which I've much appreciated, but sometimes it's just hard to go into a teacher and be like, I'm working so hard on your thing. I have so many questions, and sometimes I feel that I have to go and explain myself and my behavior and why I have these things going on every time I talk to someone sometimes, just to be like, I'm not doing this as an excuse, I'm just doing this to, like, prepare yourself, this is how I am. And I will try and be as, reasonable as I can be, but also, I'm a little strange, so patience, please. And I feel like, I like the connectivity of college more than an online school, but it's what it is. But point being to that little ramble is that I'd like to be a writing tutor. I was invited to do that because I have high scores right now in my writing classes. And I would like to do that because I like proofreading. I like giving feedback. I really like critiquing things. And again, this also has to do with the TISMs. It means that you have a lot of people who have those sort of things, like rigid structure, and also like to follow rules, because again, structure. So it means that they're usually pretty good at, discerning when there are small mistakes, but also when, like their kids, for instance, they hate people who break rules. Hey, that works for me. I'm glad you were able to pop in for a little while. I'm just going to be hanging out here for a little bit until I finish one of these ones, so Thanks for popping in. Love your username. I'm glad I could offer a little bit of entertainment. And have I done enough rows? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Okay, that should be 24. That should be the 4 on the bottom. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that should be enough. 6. You mean like the 6th of February, or is that just a typo? It just says why 6th. Hey, I'm impressed that you managed to go and figure out the comment sections. Very proud. I know that's a difficult thing. And I'm doing this also on Twitch, and that's like equally hard for people sometimes. Okay. I'm assuming that's the size I need to go. This first chain. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm assuming this is the side of the 1, so I'm actually going to add a little bit more to this. 8, 9, 10, because I want this one to have a, 11. I want this to be a little bigger than it looks like in the picture. And crochet in each chain. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Love you too. Hope you have a good day. Thanks for stopping by. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7. 8. 9. 10. 11. 12. 13. 14. 15. 16. So I want to make the edge of that 1 a little bit longer. Because it's supposed to be a little longer in the thing. So let me mark that down. So 16 on the 25th row. Okay, let's see. Chain 1 once every to the last 2. Okay, single and then decrease the end. That's fine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, decrease. Come on, get through that other one. That's also the problem with this yarn being a little bit more on the matted side, is just sometimes it's hard to pull the loop up. Okay, decrease. Awesome. Turn. Chain 1, decrease. Decrease. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Okay, single cross and decrease the end. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 2 left. Okay. I'm going to do one more row at the top here. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10. So how many am I supposed to leave with? 8. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Let's go across one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Decrease. Alright, that should be fine. Slip stitch in the first stitch. Alright. Slip stitch. Decrease. This is just a very old looking pattern. It has some weird languaging. It's also not very specific in the instructions. It's just like, just do the same thing you did in row 26, and I have to look back on the pattern and be like, what did I do in row 26? How far, most of these patterns, again, you're assuming it has been made online on like a processor of some sort, so you're like, how hard is it to just copy paste what you wrote earlier and put it here instead of saying, just look back at number 26. I'm like, what did I do in number 26? I don't remember. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, that looks about right. Fasten off. Didn't say leave a tail, so we're not going to leave a long tail. I just leave a little bit so I can tie it up. Okay, so we got number 1 there. I just gotta make another one of these. Which is the only thing I ever get worried about when I'm doing these sort of things, because for some reason I have the amazing ability to do something the exact same way twice and get completely different results. I can do this in math too. Where you're like, how did I do the same thing entirely and somehow I have 2 different looking pieces? I did that with the dragon I'm working on downstairs, where I'm like, I did the same pattern 4 times, yet somehow my legs all look different. Like, how did I even do that? Anyway, so I'm gonna do the second piece here. Or slip knot. Okay, and let's start chaining. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Again, it's a miss chain one. I'm like, how about just skip? Miss is a weird word to use. Just like, or even, what most people do is they'll say working in the second chain. Instead of skip chain 1, they'll be like, work in the second chain and go forward. That's the most common, like, verbiage I see, so it's kind of weird to say, miss chain 1. I'm like, what? It's a weird wordplay to use. It's the other way you can tell I'm a nerd for is that I think exorbitantly about wordplay. I love some good sarcasm. I love a good pun. I also really just like analyzing words. I remember I told Madeline one time, we were just sitting there talking to each other, and I was telling her about, like, you know, it was some, because we found some things, old stuff in my backpack that were essentially like little factoid cards about gems and gemology and why certain gems have certain names. I've always been fascinated in minerals and gems and stuff like that. It's one part of earth science I always liked. And, you know, we were talking about this, and originally I remember I learned a lot of that stuff, believe it or not, from Steven Universe, because the aliens in that show are called gems. They're all named after different gems. And the reason I liked it so much is because it's a little bit of light theory and it's a little bit of color theory. Where, like, they'll go and, you know, with certain gems or know over certain things, like, you know, being cursed, or having good luck, or being particularly strong, or fragile, or something like that. They'll use those different characteristics of those minerals and gemstones in the actual gem characters in Steven Universe. So I always thought that was fascinating to be like, okay, here's an interesting thing about it. Like, for instance, you know, knowing the fact that, like, rubies and sapphires are virtually the same gemstones. The difference is a ruby is a pure mineral, while a ruby with a little boron in it, I believe, it turns into a sapphire, because that's the gem, that's the color pigment that gives gems bright blue colors. Same thing with things like blue diamonds or blue agates, or, you know, like lots of other stuff like that, or like how many different gems are essentially the same thing, like how many different things like amethysts are just purple quartzes, you know. So, like, quartz is a very pretty regular mineral. Most people don't think anything special of it, but, you know, you have an amethyst, that sounds so much fancier, but it's really just a quartz with some impurities that cause it to turn purple. Same thing with diamonds. I remember I was looking at diamonds, like, why are different diamonds valued differently? You have clear or white diamonds, which are the ones that are pure carbon, but you can also get yellow diamonds, or canary diamonds, as they sometimes call them, which have an impurity that makes them be everything from a slightly off white, you know, off yellow sort of color to a bright yellow, depending on the impurities in them. Or like blue diamonds are, again, the ones that have boron, I believe, in them, and are incredibly valuable because of how deep you have to dig in order to get them. Like, the quality of different minerals in the soil tells you a lot about the earth. So, like, blue diamonds in particular are very rare and very highly valued, as are things like pink diamonds, because of how deep you have to go in order to find that proper mix of those two minerals in order to make a blue diamond, for instance. Like, the most famous one being, like, the Hope diamond is a blue diamond, if I remember correctly. But it's very well known as, like, a cursed artifact, you know, because people seem to keep dying around it, you know, and I think it's more a curse of greed that tends to follow around stories like that. But, you know, it's fascinating how, like, you know, they turned that into a whole, like, hierarchy and character thing in Steven Universe. So I remember I knew a lot of geology factoids about them, and my favorite ones were the main antagonists. There aren't really villains in Steven Universe. It's more about the villain is misunderstanding, is different viewpoints that can't align, is lack of love. There's not really any true antagonists, and that did bother some people who watched the series, but I thought it was very profound for something, especially for a kid's show, to be like, there isn't always an evil bad guy that has a mask that just wants world domination. The thing that got in their way half the time was secrets, not being honest, being repressing feelings, like surprisingly deep kids show, honestly. They were doing some pretty phenomenal things, and then they did the Steven Universe feature, which I just don't acknowledge exists because it just kind of says screw all that deeper stuff. Let's just do a mental breakdown plotline or something. I don't know. It was I could tell you the theme of the main show was love in all of its forms, familial, platonic, romantic, like generational, like love in all of its forms, and appreciating that and respecting that, and even abusive forms of love. Like it dealt with all sorts of versions of it, and which is quite profound, honestly, in some cases. But then like the second show, I'm like, I don't know, mental trauma. It doesn't have a very strong through line, which is why I don't like it. I'm like, how is the original one so good over such a long period of time, and then this other one is just like, we didn't have a lot. I don't know. It feels like it had corporate's hands all over it. It feels like it was lacking budget. It felt like it didn't need to exist. It's just one of those weird shows where you're just like, okay, this kind of makes me feel a little uncomfortable. Anyway, the reason I bring that up is that we found these gemology cards, which I had literally just because I'm like, I want to know more about gems, know about these characters in Steven Universe. But then looking back on them, there's some cards in there like I've run up before on Star Rail. Let's see, 2. Okay, I need. So that was 1. I need to do 2, 3, 4, 5, 3 more rows. So, like, I bring it up as, like, I've brought up in Star Rail, there's a group of characters called the Stonehearts that are all named after different gemstones. And these are, they're not necessarily names, they're more like titles. They have these essentially mystical gemstones that have different powers, which depend on the person. So, like, different things have different connections to them. So, like, the one that I found interesting in terms of the, what is it? It's not entomology. I think entomology is the study of bug. It's like it's like etymology, and there's another word that sounds like it. One of them is the study of language, like the science of how words form, and the other one's the study of bugs. I don't remember. I always get the two of them mixed up, but point is that there's like a study of language, and I always find those sort of things fascinating. Like, why do you name certain characters certain things? Because, like, the biggest thing was like in JRPGs, why do you use certain names? Because most names have some sort of historical thing behind them, or a reason why that name, like Ruby, they had the character Pyrrha, because she was red and fiery and makes you think of pyre. But at the same time, it was also because of how she was used in that show. She was the first death in that show, which relates back to a Pyrrhic victory. A Pyrrhic victory is one that comes at great cost. This is something I believe that comes from the Odyssey. It's Greek in origin. It's based off of a character I believe that was named Pyrrha. Because also there's this whole thing about Ruby also drew a lot from mythology as well. But a Pyrrhic victory is one that comes at very high cost. So her name being Pyrrha, the victory was won, but she died in the process, aka her name was always a hint to what was going to happen to the character, which is fascinating. That's why I'm like, don't just name your characters Tom or Bill or whatever. Like, every author wants to go in and be like, I have something special to say about my character, and it's going to start with just their name. A lot of times the names, can tell you so much about what an author plans to do with a character. Let me make sure I still have the right amount of stitches here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Yeah, I thought I needed one more. 19. Sometimes I can't tell if I chained or not. So that's 3. Gotta go 4 now. But I remember talking to my sister about it. That a little fact I learned while I was just on DeviantArt, based on like some people who came up with like a team name, and they were explaining what the team name meant. And it was interesting because at the same time I was playing Star Rail, and they were talking about like adventuring the gemstone. That's also the name of a character in Star Rail, one of my favorites, who I've talked about many times. to some extent on this stream. I don't want to tackle a lot because he's got a great storyline that I would rather play on stream and let people experience for themselves. Because it's really very good. Especially for a game that at the end of the day is free to download. But they we're talking about in the where the name comes from. So aventurine is a type of gemstone. It's a green gemstone. It's I believe it's actually a variant of jade. Which jade, most people think of like, you know, the green gemstones for like dragons, shinies, and stuff like that. Jade can actually also come in like a couple other colors too. It can also show as black, blue, or dark purple, which is why the character Jade in Star Rail has those colors in her outfit, even though we typically think of the jade gemstone as being green. You know, but it's actually a gemstone that can present in those other three colors, so that's why her colors are like that, and you're like, is this just her being dark? I'm like, no, it's actually a correlation to her gemstone, which I think is pretty cool. Again, you know, character design is a fascinating topic to talk about as well. I would love to just take a couple characters, start in Star Rail or Genshin or whatever, and be like, man, look at these, look at the amount of work that went into these things. Like, a well-designed character, a well-thought-out character, and like in Jade's case, the fact that they use her color scheme. Most of the stone hearts have a color scheme that complements whichever stone they have. Yeah. Where are my scissors? I gotta cut this thing apart. And so it's nice to go and see, and I'm going to be like, okay, most people see Jade as, again, the green variant of the gemstone, but actually, in this case, we're using the other versions of Jade for this character's design, that being the fact that it can present as those cooler tones as well. Again, there's Aventurine and Jade are similar gemstones in appearance, but they have different worth in terms of like value. Both of them are generally things that are, you know, seen as royal and auspicious and stuff like that, and shows of power and wealth and stuff like that. Makes sense, but that's like a plot line in Star Rail. The fact that these two stones are of different value but are very easy to mistake for each other. That actually is a big part of one of the twists they have in that game. The idea that you could easily mistake one stone for the other if you didn't know what you were talking about and you don't know gemstones. That's cool. Honestly, when I saw it, I was like, okay, clever. Good job. Good writing. Have a biscuit, you know? But like Aventurine particularly is, the name comes from like, it's, you can kind of hear it when you say it, but it has a similar sound to like the word adventure. Like, sounds like adventure, but, you know, in gemstone format. And the thing that I think is interesting about it is because it comes from, I believe, the Italian word avventura, which means to be bold or to take a risk. So, like, ventures or adventurers are people that are bold, who are willing to take risks, who are willing to go out and, you know, do the adventure. So someone who, you know, so aventurine is a stone that usually represents good luck or someone who's willing to take a risk, who's willing to be bold, and that fits the character that they have in Star Rail, as far as this is a person who, in simplest terms, is essentially a professional gambler, but is someone who is blessed with good fortune, so it means that, like, you know, he's more on the risk-taking side, because he knows he can always get himself out of it, because he has a particularly good luck. And so that's why it fits that gemstone is the one he has. Okay, I'm, like, just making sure these things, I want to make sure these match up. Yeah, I think I need one more row. Yeah, I'm thinking one row short on this one. I thought I was on 5, but maybe I'm only on 4. But it's fascinating, honestly, when you do little things like that. So I like the fact that, like, one of his character traits, why is this character focused on, like, gambling? Why is this character so focused on luck? Well, because venturing as a gemstone is one that means, you know, to be bold and take risks. It's about good fortune. It's about fortune in general, you know, like the name of the stone, where it came from. So naturally, it makes sense that a character who's based around that stone not only has that color scheme, but also has that kind of risk-taker nature. And that's pretty cool. Like, the amount of things that go into like character design and character naming and stuff like that. I have a character in my D&D campaign right now that's traveling with my party. Her name is Severa Winddriver. Why I originally gave her that name just to sound cool, but then later on, I came with other reasons like why is her last name Winddriver? Why is her name Severa? Well, because she's named after her father, who is a character I made a while ago named Severin, because of his severity. And he's icy, he's cold. Um, but she was named after him because that was like the one thing he softened around was having a child. And Winddriver, as in like that was the name she was originally. I had it where like she didn't know who her parents were when she first was made as a character, and that was the only name that she had. It was carved into the back of a silver dragon scale, and she's like, oh, this must be my last name, so I'm going to take it. And then later on it was like, oh well, no, actually her like father is like literally was like a silver dragon, so like he was called the Winddriver. Like most dragons in D&D canon typically have a title after what they do, like the Gravejaw, the Toxic Breath, the Earth Mover, like typical things like that, something that relates to their heritage. So he was called the Winddriver. So that's where the name came from. And that's where how names work. Like when you have someone named Goodman or something son or like something daughter or something like that, like Grimm's daughter, is like a character in like some spy game. But I love looking at names because it's so slip stitch over first 7 crochets. Yeah, let me count real fast. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, and then how many do I need to go over? Chain 1. Oops. Chain 1. Single. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, it's looking okay right now. 1, okay. For the next several rows. Okay, let me start this first row and I'll get back to what I was saying. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. But like I love looking at names because they can tell you so much about a character. Like especially when you're seeing like where the person came from. I like hiding meanings in names. It's something I love doing all the time. Because it's the way that I love unintentional story too. Like, that's also kind of also again the thing that sometimes hits me where I'm just like very autistic and stuff like that. I remember talking to my friend the other night and we were talking about this. I was talking about characters like representation. Because now that I look back on it, I'd be like, wow, a lot of the characters I liked in my youth is because they are also very autistic coded. I'm like, oh, how obvious was that? My one friend told me, like, there's a character you have in Steven Universe again, named Peridot, who's very strongly autistic coded. Like, and I remember I was telling him about it, like, all the things. I was like, I can't believe I never noticed this before. And he's like, yeah, it's pretty obvious. And he's like, because you were literally, like, the way that character was. Like, she finds this, like, one TV show that she really likes and she's just, like, super into. And, like, is reasoning out all like the lore and like information and details, and he's like, yeah, I thought it was so funny that you never noticed because literally the way that character goes about doing it is literally what you do whenever you get really into something. I'm like, oh, Yeah, I guess that's fair. I feel a little called out right now, but yeah, that's a fair assessment. I don't realize things half the time. Thank you for putting up with me. But like, it's funny to go and be him being like, oh yeah, that's why I thought it was funny is that you were literally the same person as that character, but you never realized the similarities between the two of them. I'm like, yeah, well, it's easier from the outside looking in, isn't it? You don't tend to see it when it's actually in front of you because you're inside the closed loop and you're just like, I never even noticed. And then someone else is like, oh yeah, you do that all the time. You're like, oh, huh. It's funny for me to look back on sometimes and be like, oh, well, I guess it was obvious. And I just never considered the possibility until COVID when we were all stuck inside and forced to really be introspective because we only had ourselves to hang out with. I thought of my sister the other day, and she'd been like, as much as COVID did waylay her back from kind of getting a jump start on adult life because she graduated in the year of COVID, 2020. She's like, at the same time, it was a good thing because she's like, I was doing some pretty self-destructive behaviors. And she's like, I probably would have gone down a pretty bad path if I had continued on that way. But she's like, because I was forced to go home and essentially detox from all that, from those friends and those places, she's like, I was able to kind of recenter myself. And I'm like, that is always what I'll be happy about because we were very close. We had gotten a bit distant at that because of the way things were going. And she came home, we reconnected, and now we're just a lot tighter than before, which is great. It's not like we don't argue. We're siblings. We're going to argue. And not always see things quite right. And we have different opinions on certain important topics. But at the end of the day, we get each other more than anything else. That's why we're kind of like, yeah, we never find, spouses at some point in life. We're fine with just living together for the rest of the time because we get each other and, we take care of each other. So we're like, it's not bad. At the very least, you're not alone, which I think is a very prevalent theme in most shows. It's the fear of loneliness. I remember I was watching a video on Loki from the MCU the other day. And while the person's analysis of the show I didn't agree with for the most part, I thought that he put way more, for anyone who's not seen that show, I'm not really spoiling things, but like, you probably won't understand without context, is that he puts a lot of emphasis on like what inspires Loki to change is his like whole love thing he has with Sylvie. I'm like, I don't think that's quite as important as you think it is. I'd argue he changes more from other characters' interaction than with her. They did that, and I'm just like, this isn't necessarily bad, but it's also not believable. Sometimes you look at two characters and be like, I know you want me to ship them. I know you want them to be a believable romantic couple, but sometimes you look at it and be like, there is no romantic chemistry here. Like, I don't think there's chemistry at all. At best, I can see respect for two people, but I'm like, when they kissed, it felt weird. It was like, one, that's an alternate version of you, so that's weird on its own, but even besides that, you're kind of like, that's felt weird. So it was just one of those things where you're like, I guess. But they're saying like the biggest motivation for that character is like the fear of loneliness, of being alone, of never finding a place you belong, of always feeling outside. Which, stems back to his whole like adoption thing being hidden, but like it's why he makes for a very relatable villain in the MCU because you really do feel him. You get the reason he feels this way, and the way they do it with the characters, you're like, no, if you were in the same position, you might make the same choices, That's a good redeemable villain. Is one where you're going to be like, actually, yeah, if I was stuck in that situation, I might have chosen the same thing. That's fun to play with sometimes, mentally, for me. And that's, again, my sort of tisms sort of thing I have. Is that sometimes I just sit and think about things, like consider stuff. Sometimes I'll be in the shower and I'll just be sitting there. Most of the time I'm thinking about things for my D&D campaign, which we're meeting this Saturday or Sunday, which I'm kind of excited for, kind of nervous for, because we left off in a very awkward, not great place, so I have to figure out how to essentially pull the sorry I jumped the shark card and be like, let me try and pull this back and reset it and get us back into where it feels more stable again. Which I'm not sure how to do, but, I'm I'm assuming my group will be forgiving and not be too rough on me. But like, I essentially did some stuff that I just, in experience, it happens, and sometimes it's can be hard to go and be like, please forgive me, guys. This was horrible, and you deserved better than that. And I've already actually pushed off my sessions before with that notion of like, sorry, this sucked. I feel guilt. I'm not sure that I can keep doing this, but also, that's the kind of thing. Like, I can feel horrible during the day or the evening or whatever, but the moment it comes down to going to help someone else, the burden feels less, because I may not have a great image of myself or self-opinion. I'm still working on it. A little bit at a time, finding what I'm good at and learning to take compliments and stuff like that. But like, when it comes to doing things for others, I can push myself so far. Like, having a horrible, miserable morning, but the moment you see the little kids there and they, you have to get them to school, you have to help them make some, art crafts, you see them all just kind of running around like little chickens. Like, it's, it lifts you. That's why I like the fact of, like, maybe it's also because I'm a female, but maybe it's, it's just, like, I was talking about the other day about, like, N, and the idea of that, like, autistic characters tend to have very low empathy, and that is true sometimes. Everyone's experience is different, obviously, but, like, I love when they give the examples of the ones that, like, actually have an abundance of empathy, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have more social understandings. Like, I'm an incredibly empathic person, but that more often hurts me than it does help me. It does help me at times because it means I like listening, and I like giving people chances and safe spaces, and I've been the outcast a lot of my life, so I can very much be like, hey, let me invite you in. Let me be the person I wish I had when I was that age. That's why I enjoyed teaching. But I'll go and, like, I'll be the one that I feel a lot. I feel for other people's troubles. I feel for other people's guilt. I feel for other people, like, when they're sad. But it also kind of hurts me a lot sometimes, because I do care so much. I want to do things to help people. I want to make changes. I want people to be happier. But at the same time, if you're not taking care of you, how helpful can you be? So I've definitely run that gamut sometimes. And it'll be just... That's why I'm saying we need more, like, autistic characters that are, like, N, where they're not, like, savant syndrome. They're not, like, low empathy, doesn't understand people. They're not robotic. Because, honestly, that doesn't account for a lot of people. There are some that are like that. It's a spectrum, so there's, those do exist. But it's also, like, if that's the only one we show, it's like showing, like, the very butch lesbian trope sort of thing. Like, everyone assumes that's what they look like, when really it's a variety. It's just how you love people. It's not necessarily it's a lifestyle choice. At least not to me, it isn't. It's just your manner of, like, what who you love. I don't think defines what your personality is. That can be anything. You might be drawn to certain, like, presentations, but, like, if we have two girls, if you see women bisexual far more often than, like, men in shows, because there's that kind of odd sexual fascination of two girls going down than two guys, and I'm just like, that's so weird and strange to me. But then again, I just don't understand humans a lot on my own anyway, so sometimes I'll go and look at things and be like, I'm not sure how to feel about this, so it's kind of weird sometimes. But I feel like I had a point with this, and I'm trying to remember what it was. But essentially, so, like, I like better to have, like, autistic characters that are like N, where they clearly feel deep levels of empathy, feel deeply for people suffering, and just don't know how to fix that. Don't know how to fix the problem, because they want to fix the problem and help, bring back good emotions. And I'm definitely a person like that, where I have a large amount of empathy and a great deal of patience. Probably more than I should, because it definitely doesn't work for me half the time. But just, that's why I like things like N, where he's an antagonist in that game. In the first game he appears in. But you never for one moment get the vibe that he's evil. He's an antagonist, but he's not a villain. He truly believes he's doing the best he can, and he wants to help his friends. He understands Pokemon better than humans. He wants to help them. All he's ever been introduced to are ones that are suffering, and he wants to make things better for them. So that's like, hey, what's up? I haven't seen you in a while, DC. How are things? I'm making a number 1. I'm also just been ranting about life, mental stuff, gemstones, and the science of words. So, yeah, that's where we're at. I'm doing a commission that I've been putting off for a very long time because it's something I've never made before, so it's a commission my sister accepted, actually, and so I was like, I'm not sure that I would have turned this person down, but I would have at the very least given them a farther time thing, be like, she's like, oh, you can get that in a few weeks. I'm like, Madeline, this is something brand new I've never made before. I think a few weeks might be the short end of the stick there. You see, it's going to be a number 1, like, buddy. It's going to be like a plush that's number 1. It's some character someone wanted. It was like a high school or something. I have no clue who the heck it is. But I was like, I had to look around to find patterns because I'm like definitely not skilled enough level to just make my own creatures yet. I still need to follow patterns and then make edits, which is, one day I might write my own patterns, but that day is not today. Okay, I already did a link on that. Okay, chain 7. What did I chain last time? I think I chained 11. Yeah, chain 11. 1. Wait, no. Actually, did I already chain 1? Yeah, okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay. Again, it says miss the first chain. I'm like, just say skip the first. Like, most people put the wording, they say skip the first chain or work in the second chain. This one says miss the first chain. I'm like, that's just a weird wording. Okay, and single crochet. I should have 16. So let's see. 1, 2. Because even though I'm doing this for the first time, this pattern for the first time, I'm still like, yeah, I can wiggle it a little bit because I'm trying to get more to like the picture. I was essentially given a picture and say, please make me plushie, and I'm like, sure. Let me think. 3, 4. Again, this was the only commission. I wasn't there to actually take. My sister took it while I was on break that day. 5. I was getting an autograph or something from someone. 6. 7. 8. 9. 10. 11. 12. 13. 14. 15. 16. Come on. Okay, there we go. Alright. As we feel the situation, shit, we try, need to change, leave that. Yeah, well, I kind of get that. I'm unfortunately someone who was, again, this is kind of the problem with being, like, bullied in earlier life, is that you're willing to put up with a lot. Again, I've been the loner, the outcast, and the bullied a lot in my different aspects of life, which means I have a high patience tolerance for what I'm willing to put up with for the sake of not being alone. And I've been working on that. I talked about that 2-3 streams ago. I meant to talk about movies and instead talked about all my, like, vaguely, if not very abusive friendships I've had in my life. I'm just like, wow, clearly this needed to come out right now because that was not the topic I went in with. That's why I never title my things on, like, an actual topic because I know I will not stay to them. my thoughts just kind of run in circles. And believe me, I'm actually medicated. So I'm like, kind of like, is this supposed to make me feel different or not walk in circles when I talk, or who knows? Let's see, chain one, last two decrease, got it. So like, I'll just be like, but I can put up with a lot. Like a lot of times I go into D&D tired because it's been a long week, or insecure in whether what I have planned is going to be good enough for everyone. But then once everyone gets there, I can push through it and push on because I'm like, everyone's here, they're excited, they're ready to play, they want to see what I have, and I can do more because I'll be like, I have people waiting and depending on me, and so therefore I can push off my own problems in order to be there for other people. Now this isn't always a good thing, because it means that I'm racked with guilt when I have to say I need to take a mental health day, which is what I did recently, and it just killed me for the entire week. Essentially what happened was that we had a session that did not go very well. There were a lot of problems, tech issues. We started incredibly late. I don't think I ran the thing I had planned very well. It was supposed to be more dramatic, and I think I just made it not. I think I made it very boring for my players, and I didn't realize that until later. So it was just something where I was just like, wow, I suck. And, so I'm like, and then I was like, and then the end of the week, I'm going to have to go and do it again. I was just so down on myself that I couldn't do it. So I went and, I was like, okay, fine, I will actually go and speak of my feelings, and I will, tell people how I'm not doing okay. And then you're like, okay, cool, that's now out in the world. And then immediately after the fact, you're like, you feel guilty because you're like, I could have just kept up the facade a little longer. Why am I so weak? I could have just continued to grin and bear it like I always do, and because then people won't be asking questions and asking if you're okay. And now everyone was depending on you and wanted to play this game at the end of the week, but you can't because you're mentally just not there. And you walk in circles, just your thoughts just circle, being like, oh no, I ruined everything. Because that's always been my thing, is grin and bear it, and the feeling will go away given a little bit of time, and then you'll be ready to keep going again. But stopping to think and voice those insecurities and those bad feelings and stuff like that, it was cathartic in a way. But then sending it out and sharing it, now all I can think is, oh, now everyone thinks I'm have real problems. Everyone's expressing concern. I made everyone feel bad. Unfortunately, that's a very ADHD trait, is the tendency to go back to past conversations and play them over in your head and overanalyze every little detail, even though most people do not do that. That is the unfortunate thing. And I wonder why I have social anxiety. Not diagnosed, because they just can't come to a conclusion on it or not. They figure my anxiety is just morbid to one of my other mental conditions, but everyone else in my family just got anxiety right off the bat, and I'm like, I'm there literally twisting the ink off the person's pen, and I can't get an anxiety diagnosis. Like, oh yeah, don't mind me, I'm just very crazy. Love is unconditional between family, and especially with your parents and kids. All of the other love is conditional in general, of course. Yeah. That's definitely something I hate it sometimes, but it's definitely something I've believed for a lot of times, because I've, again, had many friendships that came and went. That I could hold on to a friend for 2 years, usually, until it would either drift apart, those were the lucky ones, or explode in some massive fight / occurrence that almost kind of got weirder the more it went on. And now I have them as funny stories I can tell at dinner, but some of them, just the way they ended, were just yep, only I could do that. Only I could get into a situation that strange and odd. They're ones that you go and be like, yep, I'm not making this up, this did happen. Yeah. Well, that's the thing, is most of my people I would converse with on, especially fandom topics, were not people I knew in person. They're people I found online through like chat groups or like things like DeviantArt or even things like we did on Twitch with our original channel. That's how I found people to talk to, because I am far more elegant and succinct in writing form than I am when I speak out loud. So writing someone, I can go and I can check the conversation, I can put into detail what I think, I can get my thoughts straight, and I can edit it. Well, if I'm talking to someone, I'm just like, I hope the words I'm about to say make sense. Like, I hope that I'm not about to make a fool of myself by trying to go in with one. And that's the problem again, with my thoughts go in circles. So that's why, it's hard for me to make a point even when I'm doing a stream like this. And I'm like, I had a point in mind here, and I don't remember what it is now because I've jumped 3 different topics and who knows where I was originally going with this. My thoughts just, they do that. And so, like, in writing, I can edit that a little bit better because I can be like, okay, I'm now noticing that I have 4 paragraphs and I still haven't got to my points. So let me go back and edit it. Make sure I actually need all this information that I'm including. It's not all required reading and stuff like that, and I'll just be like, oops. My bad. Okay, I think I need 2 more rows. I have to, this is the part where I started kind of freestyling it a little bit, so I have to make sure this part matches up to the other part. But, like, I would find a lot of people through DeviantArt, through what I did were PMD groups, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon roleplay groups, where you make your own Pokemon characters in the style of the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon games, with like teams, and they can talk in the world of Pokemon, and I loved doing that. I had so many characters there. I just loved designing them. If you go to my DeviantArt, Dusklugia, like 90% of my artwork is going to be something from a PMD group. I just love designing characters like that. But that's people I find to talk to, is that I would be like, hey, you like storytelling? I like storytelling. Let's storytell together. Okay, so I need to go decrease probably one more time. No rush, bro. No rush. I'm just going to be here until I get these numbers done. I think I do one more decrease across, and that should be my 26, I think. So now I just have 2 more rows on top of that. There's a problem with trying to go and be like, this is my first time doing the pattern, and I'm going to alter it. And then I'm like, well, now I have to make sure I altered it the same way twice, because I have to make 2 pieces that have to fit on top of each other. Hopefully, I will do this the same way both times I do it. If not, then I'm not going to have the right amount of stitches. Okay, so I need 1, 2, so that should be that. That should decrease here. Okay, what did my top row have on this one? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. One, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay. Let me hook it here, so if I need to change things, I can come back to this particular stitch. I need to. Okay, that's what I thought. Okay. Sorry if I bumped the microphone. Just trying to get this thing correct. Slip stitch. Decrease. This is the part where I'm a little uncertain for, so we might Hopefully this works. If not, I will have to frog it out. Okay. Come on. Come off the roll. Thank you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Where's the top of the stitch? I feel like I'm one short on this. Yeah, I'm one row short on this. Alright, that's what I thought. Notice it is hard to tell where the stitches are in this thing. So I need to do one more row. Two, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Something's off here. Let me try this again. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Maybe do 2 decreases there. 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, I need 4 stitches at the end here. Okay, so is that going to match up a little better? Okay, I think that's closer. Might be 1 stitch off, but we'll have to deal with that when it gets here. I'm not undoing all that. Alright, so let's fasten off there and figure out what I have to do next. A little bit of a tail. Okay, so we got these 2 number 1s. Figure out how to do what comes next. Gusset and join. Okay, now we gotta look at what the heck gusset means. Again, this is like, is this like UK terminology or another nationality that's like, I never heard these terms in crochet before. Gusset and join. I don't know what the heck that means. Make 8. Work in the rows of single until piece is long enough to fit along. Make 8 chain. All around the 104 rows. I don't know what the heck. Let me look up and see what gusset means, because I don't know what gusset means in terms of crocheting. Okay, apparently it's to. Apparently it's the crossbar of underwear. That's good to know. I want to know what it means in crocheting, though. Love that. Fabric part of a bag or lining usually sewn in. Okay, yeah, gusset, make 1. I'm making a small bag, I just crochet the handles and now it's telling me to gusset. What does that mean? It's another section pattern like heading, so it says here are the directions, make the gusset, then the instructions are under that. Okay, so it says it's part of the pattern. Where is it? Let's see what gusseting is. It's a good thing I only bought this pattern for like $3. It says US terminology, but there's a lot of terminology in here I've never heard before. Materials, tension, blah, blah, blah. I have an idea how to join these. I'm just not sure if I'm thinking of this correctly. Okay, make rows of single crochet until piece is long enough to fit all around number. This is make 8 chain. Okay, so what I assume it means is that you're going to work up and down until the thing covers all the way around, which is not how I thought it was going to join them. Interesting way to do. Instead, turn gusset sideways and work along the front side of the front number piece. Join them together with a row Single crochet working through thickness of the size of number one piece in the gusset, adding a slip stitch in each corner at number for definition. Join the end of the row of the gusset to its foundation chain with a row of slip number back number piece and join in the same manner. Which is number, okay. I think I understand what it's trying to tell me to do here. Just that seems like a weird reason to do it. Let me see if I can figure this out. Again, it's using these weird sewing terminologies that I've never seen in a crochet pattern before. And I'm like, I think I get what you're trying to tell me to do. I'm not entirely sure. Alright, let me see if I can figure this out. Because the way I've done this in previous patterns is they'll have you attach the yarn, crochet all the way around in order to make like an edge. So let me see if I can do that. If not, you know, I might screw it up and then I'll start over again. This is something that I'm intending to make once, and because it's a commission. I will never make it again. I assume I can do this how I made a bag similar to this once. I think I can make it this way again. I'm going to do it with a back loop though. To give this a little bit more definition. They said do slip stitches at the corner, so we'll start with a slip stitch here. This is going to be us figuring this out together. I'm going to do back loops because those help give a more boxy edge. That I know from working with threadbares. I'm going to see if this works the way I think it's going to work. If not, then I'll undo it and do it all over again. Again, I think I've said it about 3 times on this commission already, but I'm like, if I ever do a commission in the future, I will definitely, like, this is one my sister took because, you know, she's like, oh, you're amazing, you can do anything. I'm like, perhaps I am, but even then, I think I would be more confident doing something I've done before in saying, like, yes, I can make that because I've done it before. As opposed to, I probably can make that off of a picture. How hard could it be, you know? It's a bit of a difference. So, we'll see. Or at least then if I had known that going in, like she said, oh, 2 to 3 weeks. I'm like, for something I know how to make, sure. For something I've never made before, I would say back it out a month or so. Especially because we have, again, we're not going to put a lot of, like, stress into it like we did the last one, but we do have a con in the middle of February, I believe. Which we are going to be going to, and we're not stressing out about that one as much, because we're like, we lived through Animate, that was fun, that was a big one. This one's probably going to be smaller. It's probably going to be like a mall fair. At least that's what I'm assuming based on the flyer. And so I'm like, we're not going to worry as much about it, because there's like, it's probably not going to be nearly as big as the last one we were at, and we survived the last one, so we're kind of being like, we'll do the most we can. We're also not going to super stress about it. Get a slip stitch for these two, so that these points are a little bit more. Come on, go through it. There you go. They say doing a slip stitch helps make it more profound, like more sharp on the edges, which is what I'm going for here. As soon as I can find the edge of the stitch. The other thing is I'm going around the edges, so I'm trying to be like, make sure I'm grabbing the right way. I want to actually, because I'm doing back loop only, which helps give a little bit more of a pronounced edge to it. I think for something like this, that's a number. It's going to be important, but I also have to make sure I'm going through the right loop as I'm doing that. I think I have enough functioning crochet knowledge to do, like, a commission like this. It's just, I've never done it before, so going in and being like, hopefully this will look like what you want. Fingers crossed. Okay, give me a second, I got a text. Twitch is blocked on the Wi-Fi. My sister's still working at her job right now. She saw I was streaming. And she's like, I'm trying to watch you, but Twitch is blocked. I'm like, that's sad. Also, what is it with, like, you know, schools, like, banning, like, Twitch or stuff like that? Because, you know, I remember I was at a school that banned YouTube. I'm like, I don't know why you would do that, especially at school. Like, YouTube is a great learning resource. Like, I was talking about the other day how like, again, I joke that my brother and his girlfriend cannot cook. And it's not necessarily that they can't cook, it's more that, like, you know, there's a couple of things that you're just like, I figured that would be obvious, but there's also some things I'm like, even if you didn't know how to do that, you do know how to Google, right? Like, when I used to, you know, for a time lived with my sister in an apartment, and it was after I graduated and she was still working on her degree. We lived in the same city, so we were not far from each other. And so the thing was, is that, okay, where's the thing I'm looking? Come off the scheme, thank you. So, like, we, lived together for a while. And so that meant, like, you know, making our meals was one of the things I did. And so, like, if I didn't know how to cut an onion, I Googled how to cut onion. You know, it was like, I don't know how to make... I feel like I just heard a voice. Alright, that's weird. I, like, you know, if I didn't know how to... I'm not sure I'm doing this right, but oh well. If I didn't know how to make a steak, I looked up how to defrost steak. You know? You Google it. Someone on YouTube, there's so many cooking channels, someone on YouTube is bound to have done it. Just look up for a video on how to do it. Oh, that's the Google. I forgot that that thing's on. I really hope I'm doing this right. Because right now I feel like I'm not. Yeah, that feels like a hole. Again, I'm not doing this according to pattern. Oh, hey, you're there! What's up? This will be your first time being that, and although, to be fair, I did also come in as myself on YouTube and be like, hey, me, you're the first chatter. Actually, Grandma was on here earlier. She, if you look at the chat log, she's the bird bath one. Hack the system, good job. But she's the one, if you scroll in the chat on YouTube, she was the bird bath one. She stopped in to say hi. Now she went off to sew. But meanwhile, I've been trying to figure out this stupid number pattern. And I think it's like in another terminology. It says US terminology, but they're asking me like, can you gusset and join? And I'm like, what the heck is that? The surprise bird bath, yeah. So I've been trying to make this thing. And I'm just like, this is a weird pattern. And the rule going forward for commission is going to be like, if there's something I've not made before, let's give them like 3 months of creation time, because I have to figure out how to make the dang thing first. If there's something I already know how to make, like a Freddy or something, that's different. I can do that in like 2 weeks. But right now, I'm just kind of like, I don't know if I'm making this right. I feel like I'm doing this very wrong. This yarn's being a little bit of a pain in the butt too. It's not really a timeline, just whenever you can make it. I thought you said you told the guy it was going to be like 2 weeks. That's why I was rushing to do it. Because, yeah, I have time to mess around with it, but I'm also trying to mess around with and get some of the big ones done for our market. Like, again, if It makes me anxious that I just have that dragon so close to being done downstairs. And it just needs a little more, and it'll be ready. And I'll be so glad to finally be finished with that project, because it took so dang long to make that thing. I almost don't want to sell it just for the fact of, like, I need to sit here and appreciate this and show it off to, like, 10 people, because this thing took forever. Not, like, in the complexity way, just in the, like, it's this big, so I can't walk around with it in my purse and work on it. Something I had to only work on at home. And even then, it was, some parts of it were just not clear in the pattern. Or, like, I would do them and be like, this looks different than the pictures, I'm doing something wrong! So it's like, yeah. Well, I got half of it done. The thing is, I'm going to have to try and attach these two pieces together. I tried to make the top a little longer to look like the picture. I can't make it quite as long as it looks like that, but I'm like, trying to figure out to join these two things together, and they're like, here, make a gusset and join. I'm like, what the heck is a gusset? And so they're like, oh, you know, just do this thing for like 140, for like 104 rows. I'm like, 104 rows. Do you know how long that would take? Probably not as long as it sounds, but it would definitely take a couple hours. And I'm just like, let me try and do it this other way I know how to do it. See if that will work. Which is what I'm doing right now. I'm not sure if it's working. I won't really know until I get all the way around the number and try and join them. But like right now I'm just kind of like, let me, you with your, it looks like an old person pattern. Like someone who's like maybe a garment maker or something like that. Who like uses like actual terminology instead of like, you know, the plushie making terminology I'm typically used to. These are all slip stitches, so it's not going in very easily. But hey, it just has to work once, because I'm only making it once and then never making it again. I tried to find the closest blue I had to that on the pattern, which are all of my tinier skeins that are in the loops. So, you know, had to search around a little bit for that. Because I have this color, but I also have it, I only have this color in jumbo yarn, which is hard to work with on a good day. And so I'm like, no, I'm not working with that for a brand new pattern I've never made before. That I'm also going to try and alter as I go. Come on, go through. Thank you. Thanks. Can't hear too well? Turn up the music a bit? Yeah, give me a second. How's my day been? Yeah, it was hella rose. I've went downstairs, to open up my yarn bag. I got some nice good colors, because I realized I was really lacking anything in the tan department. I noticed that when I was making Miss Jody's Corgi, that I was like, I don't really have anything in the tan department. I'm like, I have white, and I have slightly off-white. And I don't really have a whole lot of variation out of that, so I got, like, some tans. And also I, like, got some, like, mustard colors, because I'm like, if I want to do another, Glamrock Freddy, I don't have a lot left. I don't think I have enough to make another one. And I got some pale blues, because I realized I have a lot of dark blues. I don't have a lot of pale blues. I got some hot pink and, like, dark reds that I didn't have yet. There's some other I want to get from Premiere for a project I'm working on, because I realized I was like, I have this really cool Flygon pattern, but looking through my stuff I realized I have no pale green. And I'm like, how do I have so much of like certain colors but not other colors? Like I have a lot of dark blues, and like, but yeah, the only thing I can find of this were in the super bulky yarn, which is the kind I did not want to use for this pattern. Let me see, I can change the music. Well, at least turn it up a little bit. It's probably low from when I did video games. Yeah, that's why, because it's really low. Better? Okay, is the music a little better now? No, I have this really cool, like, jumbo Flygon pattern. And I really want to make it. It looks so cool. I've seen people make it on their own crochet channels, and so I got the pattern when it was on sale. And it looks really cool. But I don't have any of those greens. Like, I don't even have anything that's close to those greens. I have some, like, blue greens. But I don't have anything that's close to a pale green. I'm like, how do I not own a lime green yet? You know, you look at all the colors you have, you're like, certainly I have this. And then you're like, nope, actually I don't. So I have to go get some more pale green before I can do that pattern, because I definitely don't have enough to make it. And that's the thing, I usually buy single skeins, because if I'm making stuff for like Freddy's, those usually take about a skein to make. So then I'll buy one of the color, and then if I decide to make it more, I'll get more, like I did with my Bonnies that I somehow am always running out of purple for. Like I'm making this with Burnett because, again, if it's a pattern I don't really know, I don't want to use something like Premier or any of the other ones because those are more temperamental yarns. They shed, so they're not as forgiving. So that's why I'm making this in blanket, because I'm like, first of all, I didn't have anything close to this color. Yes, you like the word skein. I didn't have anything close to this color in my smaller ones, or at least close to this that was enough that I thought I could make the whole pattern with it. So I'm using my Burnett stuff, which has this little bit more matted look, but it's also a little bit easier to play with. So I'm using that, but I'm also kind of like, the only other color I have that's in this are my Jumbo Burnett. And I'm like, I don't want to use that. First of all, the thing will be huge, and second of all, using larger yarns is a pain to begin with. So doing on a pattern I don't really know what I'm going into is a pain. That's what I kind of found when I was using the plush twist I have downstairs that I made with that dragon, is that it's a bit thicker of a yarn, and I didn't really know what I was doing, so it works up to be pretty big, but it's also like I had to do it and undo it a lot of times, and that got a little frustrating. Once you got past the body, it's not bad. The body just takes forever to make because you can't do it all in one sitting, and it's a lot of stitches. I think at the end of it all, it was like 80 some rows, and some rows were like 5 rows within a singular row. After this and the dragon, please make another Neuvillette dragon. I actually have an interesting pattern. I was looking through my dragon patterns the other day to be like, you know, if I wanted to try any new ones. And there's this one pattern that I'm gonna have to see how intricate it is. But I'm like, it's a koi fish dragon. So it has like fins. I'm like, I have to see what that involves, because I'm like, I could do that in like Neuvillette's colors. I don't know what his dragon form looks like. I assume based on his coat, it has like it's more sea serpent-y. So I'm like, I have to go see if I can find a picture of that. Because you're like, you know, Zhongli's like dragon form, it's going to probably be just straight up Eastern dragon. So, you know, very long looking is what I'm guessing. At least. I've not seen it in games, so I don't know for certain. But I'm like, I'm going to assume very Eastern dragon, you know. Probably going to have antlers, probably has a full mane, you know, no wings, long body, probably stones or gems or something, sort of ridges on the back. I imagine to make it look earth dragon-y, but like, I can make guesses. I don't know what Neuvillette would be though. That's what I'm saying, like, because there's so many ways you can take water dragons. You can go, again, a lot of times people will just go the eastern route, because, again, most eastern dragons are actually related to water. They related to rivers in particular, because those were sources of life in those time periods. And dragons, like, were good luck and stuff like that, so, you know, dragons were important. As the water was important, because it's the way that it connected people, was through rivers. So, they had, so sometimes they just do them like Eastern dragons, so again, long-bodied, you know, manes, 5-toed feet, stuff like that. But they could also be doing it like mermaid sort of thing, which is the thing I get from vibes on his coat. I give much more mermaid vibes of like long tail, large frills, you know, still probably clawed, but maybe 4 feet, maybe 2 feet, I don't know. Or you just go straight up sea serpent, which is, you know, can be anything from the Loch Ness Monster to, like, you know, knuckers to, like, lindworms, where you're like, you know, who knows how many feet, just very long-bodied. So I don't know if they ever actually show what his dragon form looks like. Because I don't think he knows how to go into it, to be honest. I don't know, from what it sounds like in his quest, it sounds like he's not even aware he's a dragon for a while. which would be fitting, honestly. That's why I think it's funny they put Dan Heng and Neuvillette out at the same time, because I'm like, these characters are very similar on a structural level. In terms of like, they're like powerful water dragon gods, but also not aware of how to do said water dragon god things. Like, they're a little confused on what exactly their backstory is. But hey, life will do that to you. Dan Heng's case, it's not his fault, it's more like everyone else screwed him up. And he's just like, so when he's like, yeah, I don't want to go home, I'm like, fair dude, you've gone through a lot. I don't like those people either, and I don't even know them. They were mean to me, and I just came and said hi. But like, so I don't know what exactly. That's why I'm like, I could do like another one of the like Winnie dragons. That's the pattern I used before for Neuvillette. I could go maybe some more royal blues this time. Or again, I could see how involved this koi fish pattern is I have. And see, like, if I could just make that and like, you know, royal blues and stuff. I've also gotten the idea, I don't know if I have any patterns that would work, but I've also gotten the idea to, like, find an otter pattern. Because they have, like, those one kind of otters in Fontaine that look a lot like him for whatever reason. I don't know if there's actually even an in-game reason for that, why they have, like, this one kind of otter that looks like his coat. I think that's just, I don't know why that is, I just think it's funny. I'm like, I wonder if I could find, like, an otter pattern. And just do it in those colors. I don't know if I have any otter patterns, though, to be honest. I have the one I gave, Miss Erin, but that one was very simplistic. I don't think there would be a lot of room for detailing with that one. I think I'm almost all the way around this number. But, you know, I've actually, and also I've had some other, like, ideas for, like, Genshin-themed animal characters. The problem is there's not a lot of animal-themed characters in this game. Or, more like there are, but they never state it. So you have to kind of, like, look for, like, fan art. Be like, what character is related to what animal? Mostly you can tell is dragons or birds. And that's mostly the, like, Adepti that are in, Liyue, because they do have animal forms, so that's an easier one to be like, okay, this character, she looks like a they have the one lady who was added very late in the game, which is again the thing that I always thought was strange, where they're like, we're on like the 6th region now, but let's go back to the 2nd region to actually make one of these characters who was a character a long time ago actually playable, and you're like, all right, it's weird it's taking you long to get here, but fine. So they have the one like lady who's like her Adepti form is like a crane, like a lime green crane. But, like, her regular form essentially just looks like Bayonetta, so I was kind of like, I just thought that was fine. Like, it's surprising it took you that long to actually nail that part of the market, Genshin, but good to see you actually got there. I don't know, but he always has them as little familiars and so cute. Make them, like, build a barrack for Tronus. I could, but now the batteries die because it doesn't like camp anymore. That's what I was, like, saying, like, she's a, again, looks like a crane in her Adepti form, and that's the way you see her most of the time. But then, like, when she becomes a playable character in a later update. Come on, come through, what is this stuck on? Sometimes I'm trying to go through a loop, and it'll be like, I don't know what I'm stuck on right now, but I am stuck on something. I'm like, thanks. Appreciate it. But, come on. But, like, it's funny that, like, you literally look at her, like, design. It has the same hairstyle with the ponytail, the glasses, the kind of Britishy teacher vibes, like the pencil skirt sort of thing, like, more unique style birds, please. I love using hot glue. It just works so fast. That makes sense. I have been ruined for hot glue because of that one dragon CD sculpture I made. I drew so much blood making that. Both from the CDs and from the hot glue. So I have a little bit more of a touchy relationship with hot glue because it burned me repeatedly. Because I was using the industrial strength one. Yeah. I had to use the industrial strength hot glue gun, which is way hotter. So I burned myself repeatedly on it. Because you touch the metal part When it's still hot, you can very much burn the skin off your fingers. And I did that repeatedly, and then my eczema was also like, we hate you. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I don't need my hands anyway, it's fine. That thing took so dang long. And then that's not even adding in the fact that I'm working with essentially shards of glass with these CDs. And again, assuming the hot glue doesn't stick to your fingers. The smaller hot glue guns are, yes, very nice, but like I had some rough days with that industrial hot glue gun I used. That was like, I think that ruined hot glue for me. Okay, why aren't you going through this loop? Come on. I feel it there. I just can't get the needle to go, the hook to go through it. It's just so tight. I don't know why that happens sometimes. I'm probably doing this the harder way. There's probably an easier way to do this right now, but I don't want to. I think I could follow the pattern, but I don't really want to make 106 rows. Again, like the dragon before it. My hands cramping up. Like the dragon before it. It's one of those things where I'm like, there's probably an easier way to do this. I'm not going to do that way because I like to make myself suffer, or more like my brain just doesn't work that way. It's like, I think you could do this a far more complicated way, but you're gonna think it's easy when you start it. And I'm like, sounds fair. And then you actually get into it. It's like, why'd my brain trick me like this? But I've also committed at this point to this particular method, so we're doing it all the way around, even if this is difficult. My hands are cramping up so much. I'm not gonna be able to work on anything for like the rest of the day. My hands are cramping. Anyway, I'm cleaning up my vending machine toys, and on one of the kids stole a capsule from the machine I want to take home. Unfortunately, that's you do open yourself up to that when you have kids. Imagine would you have done that same as a child? Would you have been like saying, I like this thing, and just taken it home? It's like leaving stuff on the counter with the dogs. Be like, yeah, well, to be fair, we probably should have seen that one coming. It was there. It was tempting. They took it. No surprise. If this thing stopped sticking to itself, that'd be nice too. They were supposed to be better. Well, I put a Sally one in school and they got it before I got home. I did see that one. I remember seeing that tiny one. Yeah, well, I mean, if there's any generation that's going to be delinquent, it's definitely the COVID generation. That's why you were a teacher, because you're going to teach them better. What is this? I'm not even trying to get in particularly small spaces. I just don't know why this hook just is not catching. It won't catch on the way in, and then it catches on the way out, and I'm just like, are you just trying to make my life difficult? No, anyways, this lady, I remember her name because it's one of the leeway names, which means that it has like X's in it, and who knows how you actually are supposed to pronounce it. But all the Adepti also have titles though, so I don't remember, like, all of them have titles, like, you know, like Moonweaver or like Mountain Shaper or something like that. They all have like titles. I don't remember what hers is. It's something like that, but like it could be like Stormbreaker or Cloud Dancer or something like that. Like, they all have titles. I don't know what they are. They also have regular names that are just like, and that's why we have a title, because your name has like 3 X's in it. Honestly, we should be thankful that, like, you know, they made the god actually have a reasonably pronounceable name. Because some of them are just like, what? What's that? Like the little water boy guy that Sadie likes. I still don't know I know who he is, and I can recognize his name, but I don't know how to pronounce it. So I'm just like, yeah, the little water boy that Sadie likes. Who sounds and looks like a girl. I'm just gonna do regular stitches at the side because this is getting ridiculous. My hands are cramping up so much. Okay, let's join here. Okay, yeah, fine. That's what we're gonna do. Okay, they haven't taken any of the other 6 all year. What was your thoughts on the Sherlock video we were started watching yesterday? I saw where he's coming from. It's like a literature review where, like, obviously this is someone who really likes The Thing, but without watching Sherlock again recently, I can't really say right or wrong. I kind of get what he's coming from. It's kind of like if we were going to say, like, something you really like adapted. It felt kind of like when I'm saying, like, you know, as a longtime fan of the series, I cannot see this. I'm like, I also kind of get what he's saying, but I'm also like, I understand the frustration because as someone who has read some Sherlock Holmes, like, novels, I do get what he's saying. Since we're in the Gothic London mood, it was the first one that came up that didn't have ads, so this is the one that got on the mood today. But I get what he's saying, but that's also kind of like you're having to kind of fight the public zeitgeist at that point. Because he has a good point. Sherlock Holmes was never meant to be a jerk. He is, you know, a little, crass for Victorian London, perhaps, but, you know, he's still not someone who's, like, necessarily going to get arrested or was even that much of a jerk, because jerk by the Victorian London is kind of like, oh, you know, you give him a long-winded, you know, like, insult, or you say something more directly than you would normally, and you're forgetting your manners, and, like, it's not crass by today's standards at all, but, like, I do get what he's saying. Sherlock Holmes was originally actually he was a smart character. He was, you know, he was a method through which you could tell a good mystery. He was a method through which you could show deduction. But, like, I'm gonna keep flexing my fingers because they're cramped. But, I get that. Because I definitely see that a lot in media, where you're like, where did we get this idea along the way that Sherlock Holmes is a jerk? Who's someone who's gonna show off he's smart for the sake of being smart? Like, I mean, honestly, that's the thing I kind of sometimes find difficult to stomach in Psych, which a lot of people talk about as being a very, good interpretation of Sherlock Holmes, or even in, you know, House MD, same thing, supposed to be based off Sherlock Holmes and Watson and stuff like that. But, like, you know, they dial that to 11, where this is a person who's either doing this for the sake of showing off, or this is a person who's doing it because they're a jerk and need to be superior in the room. Like, I can kind of get where they're coming from with that, because Sherlock does come off that way. But at the same time, I also kind of am a little bit on the other side, where I'm like, but yeah, he's like, I wanted a deduction mystery for the sake of the deduction and mystery, and now they're trying to do character-based things. I'm like, yeah, but I'm also someone who is always more for character than I am for, like, oh, how, if you were wondering what I'm doing, I'm trying to flex my fingers out. So if anyone's wondering what the heck I'm doing, I'm like jazz handsing. I'm like, no, I'm trying to get feeling back into my fingers that are cramping up from holding my yarn so tight. But, like, I can kind of get where he's coming from with that particular notion, because I agree. It is kind of frustrating when you're going to be like, okay, this character was originally supposed to be, it's like us looking at, like, Camilla or Tharja or something like that, and then, like, in later adaptations, they just dialed that trait to 11, and you'll be like, now it's annoying that you're doing it that way, because that's not the character. That's like you looked at, like, the most obvious part of the character, and now that's the whole character. So I get that side of the argument. I agree with that. Like, I don't know why there's just this understanding in, like, the public consciousness that, like, Sherlock needs to be a jerk. I'm like, no, actually, he never was. He's a little, you know, he's a little rebellious for English society, but, like, it was never a matter of, like, he was trying to show people up. He's more like, I want to get this done, and you guys are standing in my way. So, let me try and push the proceedings along, but he still was polite, still very much a gentleman. I keep whacking the mic, you know. I get that. I don't know necessarily, though, if Sherlock alone as the BBC's, like, adaptation of the show is doing that alone, though. I think a lot of Sherlock adaptations do this and have that issue. Like, and that's also kind of just, even a lot of Savant shows have that issue. So I'm not saying that's something that I think Sherlock uniquely does wrong. It's like, a lot of adaptations do that, and that's just because that's where the public consciousness is. So people have certain expectations of this character without realizing it. But I remember they had the one show Elementary where they had like Watson was again another one that was a girl, and there's supposed to be some sort of romance thing going on there, and I'm just like, people had different opinions about that, honestly, on its own, because they're like, why are you doing that? And I'm like, well, reasons. Okay, I'm not sure that worked the way I thought it was gonna work, but I guess I can go across and see what happens. Anyway, but especially the strong male character movies. Well, that's the funny thing, is that that's why people were not sure about it, is where they're like, okay, so now that we made Watson a female and Sherlock is still a guy, obviously, they're like, now the romance just writes itself, but when it was two guys it was wrong. When now when we write it as a female, they're like, oh yeah, the romance pretty much writes itself. That's why I think a lot of interesting character interactions or ships that are like, yeah, if you switch the genders around, you would immediately peg this as a romance, which I don't think necessarily is right all the time. It's more the fact that we as a society, as an audience, are so, conditioned to A plus B equals romance. That's the problem I have with the romance genre in general. I think that you have to have a good chemistry, a strong platonic bond first before a romance can be feasible. You have to sell me that these two characters matter to each other for some reason first before I'll go and say okay, I can see that as a romance. The guy seemed to be very don't make us a girl just for romance, you cowards. Make him a man and do the romance. The guy seemed to be very against the BBC version specifically. Yeah, I agree. That's why I was kind of I kind of got where he was coming from in some areas, but also I feel like he was attacking the BBC version in particular. And I would have loved, I think that's the thing I haven't found yet, I would have loved to see a retrospective that looks at Sherlock as a character. I saw one before that kind of examined him from multiple different angles. And I do think that the Sherlock in the show is much more character driven. It's much more written like a Doctor Who episode, where it's it's trying to build up character moments, but also be clever at the same time. And it does have to balance those two things. And again, I think a lot of it is something he said that I do agree with, is that Morgan Freeman and Benedict Cumberbatch just sell the roles so well. They are great actors. But I think that I would have liked to see him analyze okay, if you don't like that as an interpretation of Sherlock, what do you like? And namely, these things that you say are wrong. Do other shows not do that, or do they just, you don't like this particular show's flavor of them? I think that's also something to be analyzed, is you don't like an adaptation, be I've seen a lot of people do the Cinderella live action movie adaptation, but people will be like, oh well, we don't like this interpretation, but here, let's show another live action one that gets it right, Martin Friedman, yeah, that's what I meant. Sorry, did I say Morgan Freeman? They had such great chemistry. Simply no romance in the show, man. Do the hard romance instead of the cheap easy one. Season 1 was good. Sorry. I meant Martin Freeman, but Morgan Freeman, I said that. Oops. Similar names. How am I going to attach these? I don't really know. Question is, do I do back loops again? Let me just do straight on this one and try and do back loops on the other ones. Alright, let's see. Where's my pin? But that's the whole thing, is that, I would have liked to see more. The thing I actually find is more interesting to do, instead of being he's kind of tackling from they do Sherlock wrong. The way I actually wish that someone would do a retrospective is more compare the cases. When he started doing that, I was a little bit more interested, where it's okay, in the original version of this mystery, it went this way. He talked about the Raka thing, where it's originally they're oh, the twist in the book was that it was actually the word Rachel. But then in the show, they're oh no, that was actually not the twist, that was actually playing it straight. And I'm that's interesting to do. How the two differ from each other. That I would like to see, where here's the original story. The one that I found is The Hound of the Baskervilles is the one that I've read for school. So seeing that in the show and then being like, oh, this is interesting, that's pretty cool. But I would have preferred if he did maybe more of that. Where he's like, oh, well, you know, let's compare how these two are different, and more importantly, see why were these changes made in the first place. Should I do backflips again? Would that make me more... Might do backflips again. Might give me more of a border. That would have been interesting to do. And that's why I think in some ways going in with the mindset of Sherlock is bad, and here's why, is a tough sell. That's why I think it's better to go and be like retrospective or comparing it to the literature or some other way than, and to be fair, that is also kind of the YouTube algorithm. If you go make people curious enough of like, I think this is good or I think this is bad, then people click on it. Gosh, we know how that totally kicked Balan Wonderland in the balls. Is those clickbaity titles. People who were not really interested in making analysis, but were hoping, hey, if I outrage enough people, then they'll click my videos. I never want to make videos for that reason. I always want to make videos for sharing an opinion. But, you know, or sometimes making an opposing opinion. But, like, I would even think about, like, that if I did Detroit Become Human. I think this is a great one, and yet all the videos I see retrospectives of are always like, missed opportunity, missed opportunity, missed opportunity. I'm like, okay. Is there anyone who just looks at it as a experience as a game? No, we're just going to complain about how we think the writer is a creep? Alright, fine. I think that's a far less interesting thing to do, but do as you must. That's kind of how I felt with his thing, where I was like, okay, I feel like we have an opportunity right now to go and be like, hey, let's look at this from this angle. Like, you know, if you are a great Sherlock fan, tell us how it differs from angle to angle. Instead, there was a lot of like, oh, they did this, but they did it thoughtlessly, so you can't really tell. I'm like, well... Again, when you come off with such especially... I appreciate that he does research, because I like when you do research just to be like, to show you know what you're talking about, but at the same time, when you're going and being like, doing so much research when you haven't even gotten into what the show does yet, then you're like, Also, again, like, there were some things I felt that were almost a little lampshady that he was doing, where he's like, I acknowledge that I don't know a lot about cinema versus writing, yet I'm also going to critique every aspect of the cinema. I'm like, well, just because you mentioned you're aware of it doesn't mean that you have full right to then just jump into it. It's like saying, like, I'm going to shoot you, but it's not going to be for a bad reason, and then you're going to shoot the person anyway. I'm like, no, I think they're going to still be upset about being shot, even if you said you had good intentions with it. You know? Now Danganronpa Case 3 is a missed opportunity. Yeah, now that was a missed opportunity. A half-decent show that doesn't follow your great writing ideas isn't a missed opportunity. It's just an opportunity to take it different. That's the other thing. That's the reason why I am hesitate to go and look at some of those, like, Detroit videos where they're like, missed opportunities here. I'm like, sometimes I think the guy even mentioned it briefly, but, like, or maybe one of the other retrospectives we did it, like the one that you kind of fell asleep for was the Haunting a Hill House one. When you have a chance, you should definitely listen to that one fully when you do one of your paintings. But that's what I was talking to Mom about the other day, was that the Haunting a Hill House. The reason I liked the video so much is that it goes and meets it on its own terms. Like, she goes and says, like, it's not perfect, and honestly, the source material it comes from was doing something very different, and you can say there are some missed opportunities in its source material, but, like, you know, is that necessarily bad? Not necessarily. Like, if someone goes in with a vision, and they're like, this is what I'm going for, so meet me where I intend to be, and then you're like, okay, that's fine. You know? I don't think it bothers me as much when you do that. Because then at least you're going to be like, well, I know that I'm doing this on the show's like, death of the author, intent of the author are kind of hotly debated topics right now, but I'm like, if something's going in with the intention of, like, I think it's the idea of sincerity. Again, I say that that's kind of the reason we have issues with movies nowadays, is the idea of sincerity. Going in with the mindset of the person made this choice because they wanted to. This is kind of also leans a little bit into, like, the whole question of race swapping lately. In Paldea and Civ oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I'm losing your things. Paldea and Civ Legends Arceus DLC is a missed opportunity. True. Not just Paldea as a game genre, but the way it was released. Disappointing game, but not a missed opportunity of a game, since there was not an opportunity for the game to be good, but an opportunity for something else better to exist. Well, Paldea is a missed opportunity in the fact that, like, there is good things in it, but it was rushed, so those good things never came out. Same thing with Kalos. Like, there is good things in it, in its DNA, but the evolution did not get there. You know, like, you had a chance. You had the cards. You just chose to not use them. But like, as I was saying before, the idea of sincerity, like, I remember someone was bringing up a video about this when they were talking about the idea of, like, you know, race swapping in movies. And the biggest thing I thought that was interesting that the lady hit on was she's like, there's a time when people didn't care as much. Like, and the reason why people didn't care, because there used to be more trust in directors and producers and being like, if they said that they thought this was the best person for the role, you'd be like, yeah, I guess then they, you know, they must be the best person for the role. And half the time it did pay out where you're like, yeah, that person was the best person for that role. But nowadays with companies peacocking around being like, hey, did you see our new diverse cast? And people are getting kind of sick of it because they're like, they go, they do it, the person either half the time either doesn't do as good of a job as they could have, or they were miscast. Happens a lot nowadays when you're just like, you're a good actor, but you were not meant for this role. Gosh, that happens a lot. That happened to what's her name, Jennifer Love Hewitt in Criminal Minds, where it's like, you're not a bad actress, but you were definitely not built for this role in particular. You know, like, there's definitely a couple of those instances of like, they put you in a wrong situation. And like, even that for like the Little Mermaid actress, like, nothing against her. I heard her performance was good, but it's also kind of like, when you're in a movie that sucks, people are going to blame you for it, whether it's your fault or not, unfortunately, because that's the way our culture works. I'm like, if you're in a sucky movie, even if you're a good actress, what's you know, in the director's only response is like, well, you're just racist. And I'm like, no, the movie sucks. That has nothing to do with the girl who played Ariel. It's like, no, the script sucks. This has nothing to do with her. This has to do with the fact that she's put in a movie that's poor. It's like Silver coming in Sonic 06. Does it make Silver a horrible character? No, he's actually very well thought out. But the game he's in sucks, so a lot of people had bad interpretations of him, also because he has some annoying boss fights. And some very annoying puzzles. So it's like, you know, there used to be more sincerity and trust that, like, hey, if you're choosing this person, it's because you think that they are the best possible option for this movie. People used to trust that more, and now they don't, especially with, you know, again, big executives peacocking around. Look at our diverse cast. Instead of, oh no, I chose this person because they are the best person for the role. And you're like, okay, I trust you on that. But now people don't as much because they're like, okay, now it's happening so often and people keep pointing attention to it that people are like, okay, you're not doing this genuinely. You're doing this for numbers and stats, not because it's harder to trust you did it because you thought that was the best actress for that role. You know? I mean, Harry Potter, I think, had the same thing where, like, some of them were not, like, written to the book exactly, but they're like, these were the best people for the roles. These are the ones that fit. But why do they, like, trust that less when J.K. Rowling releases, like, The Cursed Child? They're like, okay, we have lost that sincerity right now. Okay, let's see. Like, Samuel Jackson and Nick Fury, when Nick Fury at the time was... Exactly. Samuel L. Jackson, I think, was definitely the right guy for the role. Robert Downey Jr., like, Iron Man is not that much of a jerk normally, but he just kind of owned the character. And you're like, that became the new version of Iron Man. Even with the, you know, Bruce Wayne and, like, the Dark Knight trilogy, like... that becomes the new version of the character because it fit. And no one mentions how, like, you know, stuff like that, but then the problem is that, like, you know, public zeitgeist changes, and so then when you try and change sometimes and you point attention to the change, then people are more willing to come into arms. But, like, if you just do it, people are like, no, that seemed to work. Yeah, Nick Fury is the one I bring up most. Like, no one really thought much of it when his you know, he was race swapped because, like, he just came in and was the character. You know? And the movie was bad because everything except the actress was... I know. That's why I'm like, I felt bad for her, but I have to still call Little Mermaid a bad remake, an adaptation. It's not because she was there, though. Yep, YouTube stream, too. Actually, every single one of my streams is on YouTube. The thing is, very few people actually watch from that end. Mallion's watching it through YouTube right now because she's at school and they blocked Twitch on the Wi-Fi. So, Mallion's on the YouTube end today instead of the Twitch end because, she can't get through on, Twitch. Yeah, every one of my streams is also on YouTube. The problem is that YouTube doesn't send notifications when people go live. I don't think. And I don't think a lot of people follow me from, like, the YouTube end. But that's where all, like, if you ever want to watch past stream, they are all over there. So if you're, like, I told my sister, she's like, I want to see you guys play Sonic Adventure 2. I'm like, actually, we already did. And it's all on YouTube. You can go and watch us beat Sonic Adventure 2. You can watch us beat Detroit Become Human the first time, which was a lot of fun. I actually want to go back and edit those one day because I really love that playthrough. But, like, we beat the entire of Hatsune Miku Project X, you know, Diva X. That's on YouTube. But, like, most people come to us from the Twitch side. But yeah, everything we stream is on YouTube. That's why I like using Prism Studios, because I can do it through both. That's why I don't like using Streamlabs, because if I do Streamlabs, I have to stream it on Twitch, upload it on YouTube, and then, you know, go from there. Which is more work, and I don't like it. But I also have to use Streamlabs for the Nuzlocke for reasons I think I've repeated many times at this point. But yeah, like, you know, Sonic Adventure 2, Detroit playthroughs, all on YouTube. I would like to edit them down at some point so they're easier to watch, but yeah. Malin's on YouTube right now because that's the way she can access us, so. It's cool though, now we got two, now I know that the chat works on both ends. Well, you kind of hang out with the homies. I can see you both. Gosh, where was I? Oh, the Little Mermaid movie is just kind of sad to me because I'm like, it did not need to have these problems. It has these problems because corporate people make a big fuss about it. Otherwise, if you just change them and just say you changed them, people typically don't care. It's only when you have to go over and be like, oh no, this is the only way we could imagine this, and this is the only way we could do Ariel, and just being like, no, you couldn't. We know why you're doing this, so don't lie to us, and then say people who are, like, a little surprised at the change are only doing that because they're misogynist or racist or something like that. I'm like, no, people usually are upset for a lot deeper reasons than that, and the people who are upset for those reasons, are probably saying some stupid stuff anyway. So, like, but the majority of people, when they're bothered about an adaptation, are because they love the original property. And they are concerned about you not doing it right, which lately Disney has been doing a lot of, so the fear is founded. The fear is 100% founded. Because a lot of adaptations have not been done very well, so people are reasonably concerned about a bad adaptation. That's why, again, I was watching that thing on Hill House the other day. Like, that's an adaptation. It's a very different story, but it also uses a lot of knowledge from the original one to make its own story, and it's an entirely new experience that's actually pretty deep. Playing a House Room, we're talking a little bit about Little Mermaid, Marvel. So much interesting discourse about the MCU versus Marvel. Yeah, fun stuff. But, like, there are certain ones that I'm just kind of, like, upset about. Because I'm like, no, I don't hate this because it's a race swap. I hate this because it's bad. Because the screenplay somehow is, like, 40 minutes longer than the original. Which I even think there are dead periods in Little Mermaid. And I love Little Mermaid because I related to a character that had red hair. You know? I don't relate... As a person, I relate more to someone like Belle or Mulan as a personality. But, like, Ariel, I was always like, I could actually dress up as that one because I have red hair. I don't have the hair for anyone else, but I have red hair. I could do Ariel. But, like, you know, like, it's more the fact that, like, the remake made, how do you make a movie that was so bright and colorful look so dead and gray? Why is it that when we do these adaptations, they have to look dark and gray? Like, how do you make Underwater look less impressive? You know? There are very colorful places underwater that exist in real life. Why are none of them in that movie? How did we add an extra 40 minutes onto it and yet nothing new was said, really? You know, it's like, it's the changes to the screenplay that you're just like, why was this done? What did this add? What does this bring that's better? Because I see nothing, you know? That's the thing people get frustrated about. It's not because they changed I mean, sometimes it's the changing the skin color of the main actress, but she did fine from what I heard. I hear that her singing was fine, but like if you're stuck in a sucky movie, then you're stuck in a sucky movie. No ways about it. You can try your best to bring it up. I hear she was one of the highlights of the film, but it's also like you also have like the dumb Awkwafina character because for some reason Scuttle's a girl now. And why? Why did you make that change? And you know, like it's the Sebastian's ugly to look at because surprisingly crabs don't have a lot of facial muscles, so it's hard to tell when they're having expressions. And you know, like there's just certain things that are just. What was Flounder? He was just like a regular fish, right? I don't even know. That's the thing. You're looking at the marketing posters and be like, wow, I did not realize before how ugly a lot of sea creatures look like when you're trying to force human facial features on them. But now I do. Yeah, Sebastian, poor thing. Again, that was something that... The bigger thing, and I was watching a video from Odd One Out. No. Yes? Was that who I was watching? Who was I watching yesterday? One of the big animators. Point was I was watching it, and he was talking about Princess and the Frog. Which he's like, why does Disney seem to hate 2D animation when that's where they literally got like their like start from? When did we get to that point in our like development? Like he's pointing out the coolness, like Princess and the Frog is kind of underrated. And he's going and pointing that out and being like, hey, you know, like this is a actually pretty well animated movie with an interesting story and cool soundtrack. And it made back 3 times its budget. Like, not a flop by any means. In fact, the next movie that follows it that's 3D animated, I believe, is Tangled. And Tangled is very, very popular, but Tangled made only back twice its budget. Despite, you know, being the big CGI, it came back with worse returns than Princess and the Frog. But why is Princess and the Frog the last animated feature we have? Why did Disney suddenly become so less interested in 2D animation? You know, like there's so much more you can do with 2D animation. It's why anime is still such a massive like draw in terms of like, you know, fandoms, culture and stuff like that. Like 2D animation is not dead. There's a lot of stories you can only tell in 2D animation. Now, I still think it's the better art form most of the time, because unfortunately 3D just sometimes gets lazy. I still like, but like, you know, 3D animation in like games and stuff like that can be beautiful. But that's not always what we're getting, because usually it's the push to be more realistic in some animation forms, unless you're looking at something like Klaus or Wolfwalkers or something like that, where you're like animation's really, or you know, Spider-Man, the Into the Spider-Verse. They were trying to Puss in Boots 2, trying to push what 3D animation can do. When you're trying to do something like, you know, stylized with it, then it's different. But, I don't know. I think in general it is. Because, again, you can, like kind of like doing something that's like live action props, like 2D animation, I think, is a little more expensive, but I don't think by much. Klaus. I love that movie. It's so well done. Like, that is the best Christmas movie in my opinion now. I'm just like, why did Disney stop doing 2D animation? Is my question. I'm not sure. Like, and that's what this like one animator guy who was reviewing Princess of the Frog is like, why does Disney hate 2D animation now when that seems to be like the thing they gave them? They're really like, and like you know that there, I don't remember what it's called, but there's like 100-year anniversary like short that's about all like the different Disney characters hanging out around Disney Studios for like the anniversary. It got so much love, but have you ever heard of it? No. What did you hear about? That was also released at the time. Wish, which is supposed to be supposedly a love letter to 2D animation that's trying to make 3D animation look 2D animation, and I'm just like, no, this just looks muddy. Which is embarrassing when you're looking across the aisle of DreamWorks that is genuinely making 3D animation that looks like 2D animation, or the little studio that made Klaus. You know, Klaus is a 3D animated movie made to look like 2D through, you know, clever usage of lighting and, you know, outlines and stuff like that. Why can't Disney do that? Because they don't care to. And I'm just kind of like, why? People like 2D animation because of its, like, you know, it just can do things that that 3D animation just has not quite reached the point of being able to do. So you're kind of like, why is Disney so hung up? Oh, hey, DZ. You're back. We're just we are. Oh, I have to change the music. We are legitimately talking about movies this time. We've been discussing animation, 3D versus 2D animation. What is your opinion on 3D versus 2D animation? Do you have a preference of one over the other? Discuss that while I finish this row and go reset the music. Because now it's quiet in here again. Give me a second to finish this row and get this corner out. Okay, we're getting somewhere with this thing. And what would be your reasoning for why you like 2D more? Jeez, have I really been doing this for 3 hours? Okay, let me grab a snack real fast. One of these days I'll learn to take lunch before I start screaming. I do this so I don't suddenly pass out when I get up again. I need to let my dogs out too. They're probably getting hungry. Let me finish this round and then I think I need to go and let my dogs out, but let me finish this. That's also the thing that you have to consider 2D versus 3D sometimes is, do you really hate the art form, or is it because the quality of said movies have been coming out? You know? Are you bothered by, like, one art form versus the other because of that particular thing, or is it just because lately there's been a certain downtick in one art form versus the other? Because there's also, like, you know, there's a lot of horrible anime out there, too. And that's 2D animation that's just lazily done. But does that mean, you know, is that a problem of the animation, or is that a problem of the writing? Which is the hard thing to do sometimes. There's a handful of live action movies that are very well written. But is that a problem of live action? Or is that a problem of the writing? That's the question. 2D versus 3D sometimes, I think, is not so much an argument of that, so much as, like Madeline brought up, 2D is more rare nowadays, so do we respect it more because it is more rare? If we had an abundance of 2D movies that had the same writing quality some of these 3D movies had, will we be just as angry at 2D? That's the question. And I don't think there's necessarily an answer, but that is a question to consider. Do people long, because it's always easy to long for with nostalgia the good old days when things seem to be better. But it's like, was it truly better then? Or is it just seem better by comparison? Like, Sword and Shield, the Pokemon game, lots of hate. It had issues. I definitely had some very strong issues with it too. I came to enjoy it more as I started using it more for Nuzlocke challenges, but it has some serious, you know, flaws. But Sword and Shield certainly looks better now next to Scarlet and Violet, which kind of made a fool of themselves. That ironically, the new generation made the previous one look so much cleaner. But does that mean that the original was necessarily good? No, I still think Sword and Shield ranks pretty low in terms of, like, some of the generations. I wouldn't put it at the bottom. A lot of people put it at the bottom. I wouldn't put it at the bottom, but I think it's definitely still not a great generation. It has good potential, but it definitely has some issues. But it's, compared to the recent crap we've gotten, it's definitely looks better now. That's, I think, sometimes is the issue with some 3D movies, is that some movies have definitely hit that point of where, like, well, are we more nostalgic for 2D because a lot of 3D sucks? But there's also a lot of 2D that sucks. So, I think in some ways we are just nostalgic for that time period where, like, writing was a little bit better than it is now. And again, sometimes quality of the thing. We're just nostalgic for when it felt like people cared more about their properties. Also a fair argument to make. Yeah, No More Street has some really nice and true. 3D is fine too, but I prefer 2D. Yeah, I find it just prettier. Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's like, it's also kind of like when, you know, you're looking at like remasters of games. Sometimes they look better, but sometimes a poor done remaster makes, like, you have like the Until Dawn remaster where a lot of people actually do prefer the original version because they made other changes, not just graphically, that make the game inferior in their eyes. That's why remakes and remasters can be a tricky topic to deal with. Because in order to make a truly good remake, why do a lot of people still hate ORAS? Because I don't think it was a proper remake in their eyes. And, like, you know, I think they did a good job, because I never really liked Ruby and Sapphire to begin with. So an improvement of an AKA game that I actually like now is good in my mind, but some people might be like, well, the thing I liked around the original thing is not here anymore. You know? You know, good versus bad sprite work is a thing to come to mind. Things just, you know, third generation being better balanced now. So, you know, that's where we have different opinions and different things that we go about and stuff like that. But, you know, that's why it's interesting to hear other people's opinions. That's why I don't necessarily like to just mark something as good versus bad. I like to hear people's, like, I don't agree with your opinion, but I would like to hear why you think that way. And yes, I will probably be loud and obnoxious with my opinion and why I think your reasoning is bad. But again, I have this shirt that says, like, that says, like, I'm not arguing, I'm just explaining why I'm right. And I still hold that kind of, to some extent, that opinion. But I don't think I hold that as much as I used to. I'm realizing now I probably should have been doing increases on the corners. Crap. I'll do it on the next one. But, I will still sometimes go to people and be like, no, again, I try and be as unabrasive as I can, but sometimes I get so excited to talk about something that I just go off. But, I do try and, I do like to hear other people's opinions just because I'm like, I want to know why my viewpoint is so different from you. You know, why I like this thing and you did not. That's why another game I would love to do a review of online is Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood. Because even among Sonic fans, it's usually treated as the punching bag among the series. Like, that was a poor experiment, it was bad. I'm like, I love that game though. I played it 4 different times. I think Mallory beat that one twice too. Like, I love that game. But I think a lot of the problems, like, one of the things that I know, like, I would have to go over is, like, you know, a lot of people complain about the soundtrack, and that's true. But then again, I played the whole game with the sound off, because I usually had to play, like, in the car where I can make a lot of noise. So I played with the sound off, just put the characters' voices in my head, you know, so I never heard the bad sound effects. I never heard the poor music. And I actually like the pixelated, like, little, you know, cubey versions of the characters, because it kind of reminds me of, like, you know, older GameCube games. And I thought the dialogue was actually pretty good. I thought it had a good story. Sonic Chronicles: Dark Brotherhood. You played that one. but like it's like the punching bag online for Sonic, which is interesting because I think there are a lot of punching bags in Sonic, so the fact that everyone kind of almost universally is like, yeah, this one sucked. I'm like, I want to do a video on that just because I'm like, I actually really like that game. I played through it multiple times. Yet everyone is also like, you know, man, that one sucked. Bad gameplay, bad map design, hated doing something. Like, there were some things I thought were like, you know, perhaps not the best, but I'm like, I wonder if these are people that were playing on the DS or playing them on emulators, because I think that also is a difference. Playing it on the actual DS when you had that tiny of a screen, when you blow it up onto an emulator, it doesn't look as good. I'm like, well, to be fair, it was never meant to be played on this large of a screen. No, your standards aren't weird. Because you're not a fan of Danganronpa. The Danganronpa actual fans are the weird ones where you're like, okay, little strange. You are an enjoyer of the game, but you are not necessarily a fan of the game, which is a difference. And also, Danganronpa is a very different game. The biggest reason I think a lot of people don't like Sonic Chronicles is because it does not have great music and sound design. But again, I played the whole game like almost every time without the sound on because I usually was playing in an area where I need to be quiet. Like, you know, in our car or whatever. So, like, I also think that my method of playing the game, like, if sound is the only problem with the game, like, I, really, like, you know, didn't have any issue with that because, and I liked the dialogue. I thought that the arrangement of characters was good. This was the last time a lot of these characters were in character because after this is, like, when we have, like, the dark ages of, like, Sonic Colors and where, like, a lot of those characters were no longer acknowledged, a lot of that lore was no longer acknowledged. Like, the fact that this was one that kind of used some, like, deeper lore or stuff from the, like, comics and stuff like that. This is the last one to really feature the echidnas, honestly. Like, it had some interesting things to go on. It's really the last Sonic game that has a story. And it's funny how some people don't like this game, yet will praise the third season of Sonic X, which is also a space adventure, and I was just lukewarm on that one, honestly. So it's kind of, yeah, rip Chaos. But, you know, that's the interesting thing, I think, about the whole deal, is that I'm like, every video I've seen goes and, like, really tears Sonic Chronicles apart, and I'm like, that's weird for me, because I really like that game. I thought it was pretty good. I really like and this is like the last game that has a Chao Garden. And some people are like, but you couldn't raise the Chao. I'm like, but it is a game that acknowledges Chao exist and let you have them as little companions. You know? Like, sure, it's not an official working Chao Garden, but is that a reason to knock the game? No, I don't think so. It has Chao at all. That's more than a lot of games can say nowadays. Now we only have, like, Omo Chao, which is definitely not the best version of Chao. You know, like, it's, some critiques I heard of that game I felt were just critiquing for the sake of, I didn't like this game, I need to beat it on the ground while it's already on its knees. I'm like, no. Again, it comes down to, like, I feel there are some games that get criticism for petty reasons. That's the reason I feel like I don't take a lot of Balan Wonderworld criticisms. Like, I know the game has issues. I will acknowledge them. I do the same thing with Persona 5 or Detroit, which I also think are great games but have their issues. It's just that when the people go in with the idea of, like, this was what I wanted, and I'm just like, well, you were never going to get that. Like, that's the thing I think was with Balan Wonderworld, is that, like, a lot of people expected it to be a certain way. It was not that certain way, and then they were upset. Because, you know, if you're expecting a Nights into Dreams sort of things, let's see. Hate Christmas Song 06. Rip Chao. Chao, that's why Chao has to be a plural word as well, because they're like, oh, we put an S on this, it's chaos. Oops. Why did I get to see my Warbank? I only had one Sonic game, I didn't play much of it. Depends which Sonic game it was. Because, we didn't own a lot of Sonic games for a while, but the Sonic games we had were like the adventure games and Sonic Heroes, which were definitely some of the best ones to have. So, you know, we only had one Sonic game for a while, but we also had some of the best Sonic games, so we got lucky. But if you only got one Sonic game, and that Sonic game is like Sonic and the Secret Rings, then you're like, yeah, nah. Oh, Sonic Rush. A lot of people actually speak very fondly of Sonic Rush. I have never loved Sonic as a side-scroller, though, so I never particularly liked it myself. But, like, a lot of people speak very highly of Sonic Rush. So, side stroller. That's funny. Trying to do this, kind of really jerry-rigging the heck out of this plush thing right now. Trying to think about how thick I want it to be. I don't know if I want to mow. It's like that thick right now. I figure I have to go like at least like 2 or 3 more rows. I don't know. But again, it kind of, and also I think sometimes these games that we like remember, like, that's depending on what it was for you at the time. Like, I think Balan Wonderworld got a lot of undue hate because, one, the modern platformer genre, people are so brutal to it. Like, it's just not fair. And to be fair, maybe people just don't know how to make a good platformer game, but I think a lot of people have a way too much. Well, I have Jerry, you have Jimmy. So obviously I can't Jimmy rig it, because Jimmy's with you, so. Duh. Like, the platforming genre is a hard one to be in. I think people have just so much nostalgia for the older games. Like, you know, Spyro, Crash, Mario. And that they are like, nothing is like that anymore, but then even when they remaster some of the games, they're like, yeah, this still sucks. I'm like, then you can't be pleased. A platformer genre is a hard one to be in, because for some reason it always has to be butt hard. Or the ones that they actually appreciate are like, you know, Ori and the Blind Forest, Cuphead, Hat in Time, which are difficult games. Like, Madeline beat Hat in Time with like an ounce of her sanity left. There was so much rage that sometimes I was like, I feel like I need to leave the room because I'm afraid if she gets angry, she's not going to punch the TV, she's going to punch me. You know? Melly and I are just not very fond of platformers because we're not particularly good at them. They're very skill-based games, which, yeah, is fine if that's your, like, screwing Ori in the Time Force. I know, I didn't even get out of the tutorial era. It's a beautiful looking game, but, like, if you aren't good at platformers, you can't play it. It's beautiful, and it has a great story, apparently. But I'll never be able to experience that because I do not have the reflexes necessary to be good at the game. That's unfortunate. But also the reality is, like, you know, I remember I've watched things about people like, well, you have an easier difficulty. I'm like, I don't necessarily know easier difficulty. I like having the option, but scaling difficulty also sometimes is just a little harder. I'm not good at platformers, so there's some games I just can't experience because I'm not good at platformers. I'm generally better at slower paced games. But is that, like, you know, my fault? Like, you know, there's a lot of people who don't like RPGs or, like, turn-based because they are not, like, I was talking to one of my girls in Color Guard, asking her why she hadn't tried Star Rail. And she's like, oh, well, I don't like turn-based combat. I'm like, oh, okay. I was willing to accept that opinion, but I was like, is there a reason why you don't like turn-based combat? She's like, I don't know, I'm just not good at it. I'm like, is there a particular game that, like, made you not like it? Or I'm like, what is it you don't like about it? She's like, I'm not good at it. I'm like, well, what have you played? And she's like, I just played this one game, and I wasn't good at it. I'm like, so does that mean you truly don't like that game's style, or does that mean that you more likely just don't like that game? And she's like, well, I probably just didn't like that game. I'm like, it's more likely you played a game that didn't use turn-based combat very well, because I understand not everyone loves that type. I personally like it because it gives me time to think. But, like, I understand there are people who think it's too slow. But she's like, yeah, I'm just not good at it. I'm like, well, what game were you playing? You might have just been playing a bad game. It's kind of bringing it all back to the whole thing we were talking about race swapping earlier. Sometimes it's not necessarily the thing. It's like, you might not hate turn-based combat. It might have just been a bad game. And, you know, and you just were struggling to succeed in a game that was poorly made. That doesn't necessarily mean that you are bad at turn-based combat. It might just be like, that was just not a good game. And so, understandably so, you struggled. Because the game wasn't very good. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you hate turn-based combat. And so that's how I was, like, essentially talking to him, like, Star Rail does a really, I think for a turn-based combat game, I think it does a very good job of kind of easing you into the mechanics and realizing how to do them. it doesn't hit you all at once, but it is definitely one of those things that, like, as you go along, you kind of realize, oh, I think I can do this here. You know, you figure out strategy, which I appreciate. Because that's really the key to any turn-based game, is that you have to kind of figure out, like, where do you start to learn combos? And realize, oh, hey, if I do this thing here, it causes this to happen. And if I do this here, I can get this thing. And that, like, the biggest thing about turn-based is that, again, from my perspective, is figuring out when to do what where, you know, in what situation, against which type of enemies and stuff like that. Like, knowing when's the right time to use your resources, and being able to properly read the battlefield to know, okay, this is a good time to use this skill, or this isn't the right time, or if I just wait a little longer, I can hold out for another turn, I can pull this off. Risk versus reward, strategizing and stuff like that. Good turn-based gameplay should do this. But bad turn-based gameplay can do the opposite of this and make a battle just feel like it lasts forever. This usually has to do with HP scaling, actually. Just making enemies that are too hard to defeat, or your units are too weak in the beginning, or stuff like that. Or, you know, some people are, you know, like my brother, and they're just impatient and they don't want it to take that long. But, you know, some people will play JRPGs and some people don't. But that's why I was telling her, I'm like, I think you don't necessarily hate turn-based RPGs. I think you just played a bad one. So if you like, especially because, again, she's someone who really likes Genshin Impact. So I was like, you should, and also I just wanted someone to play Star Rail with me. But, you know, like, try playing Star Rail, but don't, I always try and get through the tutorial area of some area. Unless it's really starting to put me off. I don't know. I can check once I finish this row. I'll log off. I need to let the puppies out anyway. I need to get my own food. But, let me finish this row around and then we'll log off for now. And, I'll go look for an onion. But, I think that, like, platformers fall into a similar problem, where people have a certain way they think the game is supposed to work. And they'll be like, well, it's not working exactly the same way, so therefore it's bad. I'm like, well, did you meet it where it wanted to be? Like, I look at Balan Wonderworld, which is supposed to be a puzzle platformer game, which I think it does a good job of that. It does have its issues. It does make some strange choices. But I'm like, the hate that came out for that game felt very unfounded. It was more like, we expected Nights into Dreams. We didn't get Nights into Dreams, and so therefore we're angry. I'm like, well, you were never going to get that. That was never part of the agreement. That was never going to be an option, so why are you angry at the game for doing what it was always going to do? Tokyo Mirage Sessions is another game that fell into this problem. People wanted a Shin Megami Tensei Fire Emblem crossover, and, you know, they expected something that was going to be like a dark and edgy demon world, because Shin Megami Tensei can get pretty dark. And they were thinking with, like, Fire Emblem, that'd be interesting. Yeah. Lance is too hot for that game. But people were like, when they saw the first trailer for Tokyo Mirage Sessions, that was just not what they were looking for. A lot of people got angry at the game and gave it bad reviews just because they're like, this isn't what I pictured it to be. But I'm like, you saw the trailers, you saw this was essentially going to be like J-pop, you know, Persona. That was what you were promised. So when you get that, and you're upset that you got that, I'm like, well, that was what you were always going to get, so judge the game on what it does. Now, you can of course go and be like, it does this thing, but it does it poorly. That's fair. I'm like, I don't like it's like the new standards they should be having for marching band. They have to judge you for what's on the field, not for what they could have done. No, you have to look, and when you're a marching band, at least nowadays you're supposed to be, you should be going and being like, this is what we're giving you. This is what's on the field. You have to judge based off what's on the field, not what you could have, not what would be better if you had more horns, not what everyone else is doing in your class, what you put on the field. That's what you're judged on. And I honestly think that more media should be judged that way, especially in video games. Judge on what the game meant to do, what it's coming to the table with, what it gives you, not one, oh, well, compared to every other platformer in the genre, I'm like, well, that's true to a degree, but also be aware of what the game was trying to do, which is why I didn't watch a lot of, I hated seeing all the criticism on Balan Wonderworld. I'm like, people who are just like, this isn't a good Sonic game, this isn't a good Knights game, like, well, it's not meant to be either of those, so it's a good thing it didn't do those. But, understand it was meant to be a kid's first platformer. It's not meant to be Ori and the Blind Forest, and it's not meant to be Mario Odyssey. It's a puzzle platformer for kids. So, it's, you know, me and Malin loved it because we suck at platformers, so this was the first one we could actually beat. It was easy enough for us. So we loved it. You know? And for other reasons too, but Malin, you know, definitely didn't have a crush on the, you know, the main villain, but, you know, neither here nor there. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Tokyo Mirage Sessions is a weird one because, again, it was uniquely what it was, and people just weren't ready for that. They didn't want it to be that, and they're like, no, let's make something different. Maybe we complain enough, but now Tokyo Mirage Sessions Sharp FE was the re-release on the Nintendo Switch, and it was wildly praised. In fact, a lot of people will include it on their top 10 hidden gems list. Because surprisingly, they didn't even put that many like new updates to the game, honestly. It's just some like DLC content, but like it's funny to see how many people went and were like, "Wow, this game is great." And they were like, "Yeah, it always was. You just didn't want to admit it because you were upset that you didn't get the edgy demon game you wanted." But then when people started judging it as its own RPG on its own mechanics, for what it puts on the field, people are like, wow, this is like a hidden gem of a JRPG. This is a great game. You know, it's a lot of fun. And again, Engage, when it was re-released after Persona 5, not Engage, Tokyo Mirage Sessions after Persona 5, when it was re-released, did a lot better. Now a lot of people go and be like, man, what a hidden gem. How did we not notice this the first time? I'm like, well, I knew it the first time. Just people are being kind of butthurt about it. Okay. I'm not sure how much thicker I want to make this, so I'm going to think on it. Decide later. Right now it's about an inch or so thick. I'm not sure how thick I want it to be, because I still need to have enough yarn left to do the feet. I think I can maybe do one more row. And if I just stuffed it pretty well, it'd probably be fine. So I'm gonna do that later because my hands are starting to hurt. And I need to check for if we have an onion from Ally. But so I'm gonna cut this short here, as I'm getting to the point where my body's like, bro, you haven't eaten in like 6 hours. You need to go to eat something. And I need to let my puppies out, and I need to check and see if Malin has an onion. Otherwise, I probably could keep chatting here for like another, you know, hour, probably, if I, you know, if there were other people to watch the dogs, if I had eaten lunch beforehand. But, funny thing, I was gonna set a timer, like a 2-hour timer, to make sure that I didn't stay up here all afternoon, and then I forgot to set a timer, so I stayed up here all afternoon. ADHD is the best, people. But anyway, so thanks for everyone who stayed here. Thanks for everyone who stopped to chat, even if it was just me and Malin Chen, or me and whoever. I'm glad people who can chat, glad people who can lurk. I appreciate everyone dropping by from both the YouTube and the Twitch side today. It was fun times, but I need to go and do a couple things, especially if I still want to stream tonight the Nuzlocke. I need to take a little bit of a break to recharge. But yeah. Thanks for everyone who showed up. Glad you're able to be here. I'll show you my thing when it's done, I guess. Such a weird little thing I'm doing right now. I'm definitely not doing it the right way, and I'm gonna try and care about it because someone commissioned it for me, but I'm just kind of sitting here being like, well, that was a thing. I'll try and make it look better. Anyway, thanks for everyone for hanging out. I appreciate it, and I'll see you guys a little later.